Tessa, can you check for quorum, please?
Thank you. If everyone could please take their seats.
We're having issues with the elevator this morning,
Oh,
so that's like why we don't see our regular public members. Up here.
I know. All right, good morning. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning. Good morning. Just trying to be on time. Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning. The November 22nd, 2024 Board of Directors meeting is called to order. First, I'd like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation. Please go ahead.
Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, World, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias.
Thank you. So just a reminder, I'm going to do my best. My voice is leaving me again. We'll keep at it. But thank you, everyone, and good morning. So now I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. Tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territories and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, most in any county in the United States, from our cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, Ligueño, the Liceño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. The land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony, and as members of SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Tessa, could you please confirm quorum?
Thank you and good morning. I can confirm a quorum with 14 of 19 voting jurisdictions present, and we have 6 advisory members as well. And if the chairwoman would please allow me, we have 1 voting member and 1 advisory member that would like to participate remotely. And I would like to confirm that they are able to do so at this time. For our voting member, Mayor Drucker, if you could please state in general description the reason that you are requesting to participate remotely.
Dave Drucker, Mayor of Del Mar. At this point, I have some physical disabilities that is not allowing me to drive.
Thank you. I can confirm that that does qualify for remote participation, and also that Mayor Drucker has not participated remotely in any board meeting yet this year. I would like to confirm that Mayor Drucker, you're able to keep your video on at all times and you may use your audio only when speaking.
That's correct.
And if you could confirm whether you have anyone 18 years or older in the room and their general nature relationship with you.
There is nobody else in the room.
And just to note for both, because a voting member is remote, we will be taking all votes on a roll call basis. We also have Robin Joy Maxon with the Association of Planning Groups advisory member that is requesting a remote participation. Robin, if you could please state the reason that you are requesting this.
A contagious illness.
Thank you. That does qualify under just cause. And Robin has not participated remotely in any board meeting yet this year. If you could confirm that you're able to keep your video on at all times, and if there's anyone 18 years of older in the room with you and their relationship.
I can keep my video on at all times, and there was no one else in the room with me.
Thank you. And thank you for participating today remotely. Would you like me to move on to non-agenda public comments, Chairwoman? We will start today with non-agenda public comments and member comments. As a reminder, no comments shall use loud, threatening, profane, or abusive language that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. It will not be tolerated. Disorderly conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the board meeting is prohibited. Per board policy, the amount of time allowed for each verbal public comment is determined based on the number of agenda items, the complexity of those items, and the number of persons anticipated to comment. This allows us to hear from as many people as possible and to complete our business while we still have a quorum. Based on those factors, the chairwoman has determined that today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 1 minute for their comments. I would like to start our non-agenda public comments and remind the public that we only take the first 5 at the beginning of the meeting. The remainder will be taken at the end of the meeting. The first 5 that will be taken now: Truth, Purita Javier, Cesar Javier, phone number 415, and Paul the Bold. Those that I will call at the end of the meeting include Blair Beekman, and phone number 672. Truth, please come to the podium.
All right, I was given a gift. Apparently, I'm a superhero bringing truth. And by the way, Mario's looking much better. I previously recommended Tony as a chair option, but since he's unfortunately on his way out, an equal or better replacement, Rebecca. Or we can always force David Zito to be chair. I also want to remind/disclaim that I support no political parties because they are a conflict of interest against the country. And in major local news, that's me at the Imperial Beach City Council meeting. I also now have an IB jacket pin, and I put it right above my no SANDAG pen. Hint, hint, Joel Anderson. Last meeting, Nora, you made Tessa say no personal attacks. What changed from 2021 when you said this?
Is that official? You can take your names. Call me back. Call me whatever you want.
I won't do that, but somewhat related. De-escalation training in IB was only $2,000. That's cheaper than Nora's 3 personal paranoid security guys, each costing the entire county $87.90 an hour. The rental SUV is $3,000 a month, and National City just had to pay an over $13,000 settlement to someone named Nora Vargas.
And your time has expired. Purita Javier, please come to the podium.
Hey, good morning. Hey, good morning. No. Start reading them.
Okay.
Yeah.
To whom it may concern, we, the residents of Streamview Drive, Limona Avenue, and Leah Street, and the General Choyos Creek neighborhood, Southeastern Board of City of San Diego, District 9, respectfully inform that there exists a home occupation business situated in our area dedicated as residential zone. The business is sole proprietorship in non-metallic mineral product known as pottery, ceramics, and kiln furnace. Operation situated at 5238 Streamview Drive, San Diego, California 92105, and has been operating since 1984. Science and research studies explains that clay mixed with chemicals such as lead.
Thank you. Your time expired. Our next commenter, Cesar Javier, please come to the podium.
1 minute story of life and death. This is the rule. My city, my public servants are failing. Where is the mayor here of San Diego? Where is the councilor president? They're absent. Only the fighting just front line of the Juana River issue is here. Madam Moreno, where are the planning people of the city of San Diego? They failed to solve a very basic survival fit. I come here to do my duty as a soldier. Being a soldier for 30 years, will be a soldier, and I will be a learner teacher, University of Life. Sir, Harvard Law graduate, sir, listen. I am finishing my law graduate, and I am finishing this book again and again, because this is the rule, this is the
Your
guide
time has
for implementation of
I
our
need to go on
efforts.
to the next commenter.
Good morning.
Paul the Bold, please go ahead.
How is that, my friend, fellow soldier?
Welcome to any prospective board members. Thanks to all who participated in the democratic process. I hate to be so negative right off the bat, but SANDAG has yet to admit the full scope of its problems and has, for years, many of us feel, been a burden to the taxpayers and the people it is supposed to serve. East County now has a representative at SANDAG, but no vote. This reeks of corruption, illegal or not. Good that the sales tax was rejected. It would have been taxation without a representation. I keep saying that SANDAG does not continue to deserve to continue in its present form, but I'm not the first. The state suggested this in 2001. I think that dividing SD County into voting areas by interest and geography rather than cities is a much fairer way. All of the county would be covered and have a vote.
Your time expired. It looks like phone number 415 has dropped their hand, so I'll go ahead and call phone number 672. Please go ahead.
Okay, Gonzalo here. So it's always funny to hear undoing the injustices of the past at the beginning of these meetings to the tribal nations. Such malarkey, honestly, seriously. Why waste the time saying all of that junk when our local government continues to do so much injustice to its own citizens daily? When the people who are genuinely concerned are given only 60 seconds, it sucks. It's a joke. It's not a democracy. Let's just wake up to the reality that we are all tax slaves to an oligarchy. And none of you are, it's nice to think that you're doing it for the people, but in actuality, you're not. Sad. Happy Friday.
And that concludes the non-agenda public comments.
Thank you. All right, before I turn it over to member comments, I want to welcome Ann Fox, District Director for Caltrans. What is it, Region 11, right? Yes, welcome. Did you want to say,
No, I thank you very much for the introduction. And yeah, I look forward to being part of the advisory part of this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning. I just wanted to let everybody know from now through the end of the year, if you reserve your parking at sandiego.org/parking and use the code holidays, you get 20% off on parking. We, as you know, opened half of our Terminal 1 parking lot, new Terminal 1 parking lot. So there's plenty of parking. We've been telling people not to park at the airport for about 2 years now. So now we're telling them to park at the airport. It's time to come back. So so you'll get a really good discount through the holidays if you use that code. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any additional member comments? I don't see any. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn Vitesse, who is our CFO, and she's going to be sitting in for Mario today. And so I'm going to turn it over to her for an update.
All right, thank you very much. Before we begin, I really want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who helps keep all these meetings running so smoothly. Our clerk of the board, Tessa Laro. will be retiring in December, and this is her last meeting in person with us. She's been with SANDAG for 18 years. She's been a huge asset to the team and to the agency as our executive assistant for a time and then clerk of the board. So we really want to congratulate Tessa, wish her a happy retirement, and thank you for all that you have done for us. All right, so we've been focusing on our internal controls and processes. We've continued to build out the program project management office to support oversight and transparency, and we've been continuing to focus on fundamentals so we can deliver great projects for the region. As some follow-ups, last Friday, you should have received an email update to follow up on some prior questions. And so I'm just going to briefly recap some of those. You asked about priorities and recent efforts of the Mobility Working Group. This is the group that serves as critical resource carrying out and promoting the cross-agency coordination on policy planning, development, deployment, and operations of mobility solutions to implement the regional plan. So this group makes recommendations to SANDAG staff and to the Transportation Committee. And in the past year, they've discussed a wide range of projects and initiatives, including the 2025 regional plan, Purple Line, the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans, flexible fleets, Vision Zero, clean transportation programs, and potential Transnet extension ordinance amendments. Moving on to legal counsel, you have asked what the current legal counsel opinion is as to whether the voting structure for a Transnet amendment would follow the structure in place at the time that Transnet passed, or if it would follow the new AB 805 voting structure. So later this morning, you're going to be asked to participate in a discussion with legal counsel regarding the scope of services that would be provided, including matters such as research assignments. So that's agendized for you today. You've also asked, moving on to grade separations, you ask if SANDAG could provide a plan to support cities that want to pursue grade separations, and we'll be bringing this item at a future board meeting for discussion. In the meantime, as a side note, if any of your local jurisdictions are pursuing state or federal grants and interested in letters of support, please feel free to contact us, and we'd be happy to evaluate any items for letters of support. Moving on to Otay Mesa, again, later this morning, you're going to hear an update from staff about State Route 11 Otay Mesa East project. Earlier this week, we had a great visit with Ken Salazar, the ambassador to Mexico. And we visited Otay Mesa East to see the progress that's been made on the Siempre Viva Interchange Bridge, which is ultimately going to support mobility to and from Otay Mesa East. So we really appreciate the continued collaboration with the ambassador and the project partners on both sides of the border to deliver the port of entry. On the airport transit connection, we have been receiving a lot of great data from our Airport Transit Connection Travel Survey. The survey continues to December 2nd. It will help inform how residents, visitors, and employees travel to and from the airport. So we're continuing conversations with MTS and with the Airport Authority about near-term solutions on this as well. And we plan to share more details when the team presents at the December 6th meeting. We also plan to present updates to the Airport Authority and the MTS Board of Directors in the start of the new year. On the Purple Line conceptual planning study is wrapping up, and we're starting to present findings to the advisory groups, beginning with the working groups. And then we plan to go to the Transportation Committee and the Board of Directors early next year for additional input before we begin the next phase of planning. Last week, staff shared the Regional Vision Zero Action Plan at the Transportation Committee. It was met with a lot of excitement, and it was very well received. This is our first region-wide Vision Zero Action Plan. It identifies a safety-focused network, and by doing so, all of your local cities, county, and tribal governments are now eligible to apply for federal grant funding. Our team has been meeting regularly with your technical staff to provide information and assistance. And we look forward to continuing the momentum to implement the action plan. Moving on to some construction notices, Border to Bayshore Bikeway. Construction continues and work in Imperial Beach will begin in early December. To add safety and traffic calming features in the community, there will be a 3-week intersection closure at 14th Street and Grove Avenue. Residents and nearby businesses can expect intermittent noise, traffic control and detours, and there will also be no parking signs in some areas and temporary lane closures and traffic shifts. There will also be some physical barriers and guidance signage put up in the project area, and we're sharing notices in the community about the upcoming work. Last week, we hosted a community meeting in Imperial Beach, and we had good discussion. Regarding the Pio Pico Drive project, part of the Build North Coast Corridor work in Carlsbad, a full closure on Pio Pico Drive between Chestnut and Palm Avenues is expected on Tuesday, December 3rd at 8 a.m., continuing through Thursday, December 5th at 4 p.m. The closure will allow crews to safely complete roadway paving and stormwater drainage improvements. Nearby residents and businesses can expect minor travel delays, construction lights, and loud noise. Traffic control and flaggers will be in place to guide travelers in and out of the nearby Chestnut Plaza office building and Highland Inn, and posted signage will guide people looking to access the Carlsbad Library Learning Center. And as always, we want to thank the public for their patience during these periods of construction. And finally, I want to give you some notice on upcoming office closure. So as a public reminder, SANDAG's Customer Service Center will be closed next Wednesday, November 27th through Friday, November 29th for the holiday week. And our main office here at 401 B Street is closed Thursday and Friday next week. And I will turn it back to you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent. From item number 2 to 8. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to public comment. Oh, did you have a question? Did you have a question about the consent agenda or? Oh, okay, okay. I wasn't sure if you were this one or that one. Okay, good. All right.
I have 3 public commenters on the consent agenda. Truth, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Cesar Javier and phone number 672. And I apologize, one more hand was just raised, Paul the Bold. Please remember to state the numbers on the consent agenda to which you are speaking.
Item 2, attendance says Katie was here but never voted. I don't think that's true. Item 3, 3 months of BOD meetings cost $2,839. All meetings in this room cost $3,824. The Tijuana Mayor got his own taxpayer-funded American meet and greet at $676. $57 is the cap for a dinner per board member is way too high. And May Day Raise had 12 days to get that form in. Item 5, I'm glad to see borders admitting schedule realities. 9:30 a.m. sucks though. Item 6, SANDAG's got a $662 million budget and most projects are looking for funding. I appreciate the capital program report with details like date variance. Item 7, multi-million-dollar freeway lids belong atop garbage. What happened to reconnecting communities like National City? The report shows no real advancement in public transit services, not even discussion about a solution for the fiscal cliff. Item 8, I disagree with the policy using the word should versus shall be open with the pledge. Why is SANDAG non-committal to regional governance? And of course, that's rhetorical. The answer is regional governance isn't American.
Your time has expired. Cesar Javier, please come to the podium.
I got the strength, the rule and guidelines before I speak to you. This is the substance of my comment on this approval of meeting. Sir, APCD Governing Body Chair, Mr. Jack Su, Madam Moreno, in the minutes, we should reflect the substance of what was or has transpired. For example, the State of the Nation address of the CEO, if I may say that, that was laudable. And that should be the logo, the motto, every time we start the meeting. Am I right? Please say, yeah. Oh, so but nobody go with my statement. Do you agree with, sir? He loves to
Your
hear
time
it.
has expired.
Thank you.
I'll move on to Paul the Bull. Please go ahead. Paul, there you go.
I see you leave out number 2, the meeting minutes. I see you leave out details of what the reports or items actually were beyond the titles, and the juicy details of what the speakers said are also gone. Just a list of names as if it's a roll call. Then you say the board voted to approve the consent agenda as amended, but you don't say how it was amended. And you sure don't want to reveal what I said about the chair judging others or what the Transnet reports omitted. You should at least have a link to the specific item. We don't have time to review the whole tape of the meeting to find these things out. 5, legislative calendar. A supposedly trusted agency like SANDAG should have at least one board meeting every month. And I see you're moving up the second monthly directors meeting by half an hour. Hope that leaves enough time for our 3-minute speeches you advertise. Any more jokes?
Your time expired. Our final commenter on consent agenda 672. Please go ahead.
Okay, so 3, Chief Executive Officer Delegated Actions Information. The number of items from previous months is alarming. The board needs to be kept up to date on legal and other issues, which might be material to the discussion on how to prevent future issues. 4, Policy Advisory Committee actions approved. I hope that the Mobility Working Group, which recommended that federal performance management targets look at all these carefully to make sure they were enhancing safety and reliability for this county as opposed to other areas. Hold up. For example, bikeways, lack of safety improvements enough that the state Senate had to call for a commission for common sense improvement of a separation for bicyclists from the main lane of traffic, or special improvements to enhance mobility in wildfire areas.
Your time expired. That concludes the public comments on consent agenda.
Thank you. I just would like to pull item number 7. I have some comments about that item.
Okay.
Don't necessarily need a staff presentation. Would you like for me to go ahead, Chair?
To it.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you to SANDAG, Mr. Orso, who's not here, for the recent pivot to private and more sensible planning efforts for this MPO. I believe eliminating the downtown mobility hub and shifting funding away from low-performing programs with high costs to more promising flexible fleet solutions is a step in the right direction, as we have spoken about at several meetings now. A recent example at the airport is shifting focus from a fixed rail people mover to studying rapid and other flexible fleet options. With that said, and I hate to say, but this report is somewhat scant, and I think a missed opportunity to inform the board of the current regional trends, challenges, and successes in transit. And, you know, we talk about a lot having the reports reviewed by the Mobility Working Group and what their recommendations are. I don't think, at least my staff has had the chance to review these type reports, and I do suggest that this report be delayed until the Mobility Working Group can comment on it. With all the great SANDAG data, SANDAG collects, why not show the 10-year past performance charts of the different mode shares to visibility and show how transit is performing? some specific comments on this report, I would ask to please include 10-year Historica data to show performance of programs, our coastal rail trail segments in the SANDAG Regional Transnet Bikeway projects, of which the North Coast completion is not done. Regarding the fiscal cliff that we talk about with recovering from COVID, I think the SANDAG team should continue to pivot to provide more cost-effective programs for delivering safer, faster fare and cleaner mobility options that commuters will actually use. I think this will help vast transit deserts in our community and all of North County. As an example of a program that is not performing well, the Coaster program has never met its original projected ridership goals, with ridership peaking 10 years ago and ridership down 63.9% from 2013 to 2022. And this is obviously after a massive increase in capital expenditures during that period. Costs for subsidies for Coaster trips went up about a 650% increase. So I guess my overall suggestion is quite simple, but sometimes I think simplicity is probably good. Transferring funding from low-performing programs to cost-effective programs on demand. So I move we delay the action on this report until the mobility group can provide their comments and recommendations and bring this report back in December.
All right, so Councilmember, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have folks, because you pulled this item, right? You actually don't have to pull it unless.
Sorry, Chair, that we have the mobility working group weigh in on this and bring it back to us in December.
You're actually making a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So I just want to make sure I clarify with this, because you don't necessarily have to. So you're going to pull the item. So if we're going to pull the item, let me go ahead and go through the rest of the consent, and then we can come back to your item, okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So when you said it really fast, and I didn't understand what you were. So I thought you were talking about other items first, and anyway.
Sorry, people from the South are usually never accused of speaking fast. Sorry.
No, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just letting you know what happened. Okay, so any other, I have two people on the queue right now. I just want to make sure that any of the comments that you're making are not related to item number 7, okay? So Mayor.
So mine is on item number 8.
Okay.
Not on item number 7. On item number 8, I am in agreement to move forward on this. The only thing that I would like to change is on page 61. Overall, number 13, page 13, to change should on a 7.2.8 to shall, and then also on 7.5, that should be changed to shall. Just those two revisions, Chair.
Okay. Can you tell us what numbers again?
I'm sorry. So overall, page 61, page 13 on the item, and that would be 7.2.8. Every meeting of a legislative body shall be opened with the body. And then 7.5, the SANDAG committee and working group guidelines shall, instead of should, be used for additional guidance. Just one word twice.
No
Sorry.
Yeah, I do have comments on item number 7, which I will hold, but I'm happy to move the consent agenda.
Okay, fantastic. So we have a motion and a second, and I need.
Sorry, Chair, are we voting on everything together?
Minus number 7.
Minus number 7. Okay, with number 8 with the revisions?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Just checking.
Right? Yeah.
Did you get a second?
Yes. All right, so can you go ahead and call roll?
Thank you. I'd also like to remind the board members who are voting that you will need to also note your vote electronically with your clicker. Carlsbad, Councilmember Burkholder.
Yes.
Chula Vista, Councilmember Chavez.
Yes.
Coronado, Mayor-elect Duncan.
Yes, thank you.
County of San Diego, Chairwoman Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
Del Mar, Mayor Drucker.
Drucker, yes.
El Cajon is absent. Encinitas, Mayor Kranz.
Yes.
Escondido, Councilmember Garcia.
Yes.
Imperial Beach, Councilmember Fisher.
Yes.
La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Aye.
Lemon Grove, Mayor Vasquez.
Yes.
National City, Councilmember Molina.
Yes.
Oceanside, Councilmember Robinson.
Yes.
Poway is absent. City of San Diego, Councilmember Moreno.
Moreno, yes.
San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, yes.
Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, yes.
Solana Beach, Second Vice Chair Hebner.
Yes.
And Vista, Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Melendez, yes.
All right,
Mayor
so,
Melendez. I mean, Deputy Mayor Vista. Thank you. That motion passes with 3 members absent.
okay. All right, now, so the next item, so you pulled the item, you spoke on it, you've made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, no, I'm asking if there's a second so we can have a discussion on the motion that's on the
Second,
floor.
and I did have one question of staff.
Well, give me 1 second. I'm going to turn it over to Council Moreno because she had wanted to speak. I promise you I'm running this meeting well. I just need to make sure that everybody lets me run the meeting and we're going to be fine. Go ahead, Councilman Moreno.
Thank you. Can you repeat the motion?
Yes, Councilmember, I believe it's, they have it to put on the screen for us. Basically, it's a delay in action on this item until the mobility working group has a chance to provide their comments and recommendations.
Okay, and I do have, thank you for repeating the motion. I just needed a refresher. So this is the item number 7 is the annual public transit report. And I do appreciate staff working on this report. And I want to take the opportunity to highlight the work being done on 2 critical projects, the San Isidro Transit Center project and the Barrio Logan Freeway lid. For the San Isidro Transit Center project, I'm very pleased with the progress we've made so far. And the reality is that this project is more than just an upgrade to a transit facility. We're talking about a transit facility next to the San Isidro Port of Entry, the most utilized border crossing in the Western Hemisphere. 50% of the folks that are crossing the border will either utilize MTS bus or trolley. So enhancing the San Isidro Transit Center means addressing long-standing transit challenges and paving the way for a more integral, user-friendly experience. I am grateful for the funding secured and the community's input to help shape this project. The involvement of over 600 survey respondents underscores the community's strong engagement and also shared vision for a more connected and vibrant San Isidro. Regarding the Barrio Logan Freeway lid project, SANDAG received $3.3 million in federal funding to study the feasibility of a freeway lid at 2 location sites within the Barrio Logan community plan to prepare for future implementation of one or both lids. Barrio Logan was split in half by the construction of Interstate 5 freeway in the mid-1960s, which effectively divided the community and displaced many residents who happened to be primarily of Latinos. The freeway lid project represents a critical step in mitigating those impacts, improving the air quality, and protecting the health of residents in one of San Diego's most underserved communities. The I-5 freeway has historically, as I mentioned, divided Barrio Logan, so the $3.3 million investment in this feasibility study shows that the voices of Barrio Logan residents are being heard. And it's imperative that we continue advocating for projects like this as we move forward. And I'm happy to support the motion on the floor. I think it's reasonable.
Actually, give me 1 second. So there's been a second on that motion, right, already? So, okay, all right, thank you. Let me go ahead and turn it over to staff because I think there are some concerns about what it means to postpone this, and I want to make sure that all of you have the information before we make this decision. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. We are absolutely happy to take it to Mobility Working Group. The challenge is going to be that the report is due December 31st to the legislature, and our next Mobility Working Group meeting is not until December 12th, which is the day before your last board meeting of the year, December 13th. So submitting it by the deadline could be a challenge if Mobility Working Group would like to see more content added to the report and then to be able to provide it to you for approval to submit to the legislature.
All right. Vice Chair.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to make a substitute motion that we approve this today with the understanding that we would take it to the Mobility Working Group. But just to clarify, this is just fulfilling a requirement of AB 805. It's just a report, which is basically a snapshot. If I've got this wrong, let me know, of what things, where the state of transit is right now. I would like to ask staff to, when it goes to the Mobility Group, to also add, when we're talking about the other highlights of planning and construction for fiscal year 2024 under the Lausanne Rail Corridor, to note a big effort that we have embarked upon, and that is that the values analysis team has started working on the Lausanne corridor also. But I would like to make a substitute motion, as I stated, that we move it forward today, send it to Mobility Working Group with any updates, but submit this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then can you add to your motion, or maybe just a guidance, that as you're planning for next year, that those, I know it went to Transportation Committee already, but I think make sure that we're planning backwards. So if something's due December 31st and you have board meetings, that we make sure that all of the folks who are included are part of that as well. Okay, Mayor.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for your comments, Chair, that you just actually spoke about, and that is, we kind of always have this, we have a deadline, and at the meeting prior to that, well, you have to approve this because here's a deadline right away, because my question was actually going to be on the timing, because I did note that it was December 31st. But if there is an issue with the Mobility Working Group, I think that we should be informed of that at our next meeting, just because, I mean, it's an important part of all of this. And I do agree that different options should be, we actually just have the NCTD Plus that just came forward, and having those options for our community to move people around is really important. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Shu.
Thank you. This item did come before the Transportation Committee, and a lot of discussion occurred during that meeting that we just had with a lot of suggested changes or additions to these reports or the information that's received. I agree that the report maybe could be more comprehensive and deal with a number of other issues with regards to environmental justice and a lot of things that Member Moreno just also brought up with regards to our needs in our whole entire region. But it is simply a report that needs to go forward, that is required. So we have that timeline issue. With regards to mobility commission or committee, it is a subcommittee of the Transportation Committee. And I agree that we need to review that again and see what we're getting from that committee and see if there's any way we could improve that. But with that, I'm in support of the substituted motion in that I think we're constantly trying to improve things, and this substitute motion allows us to move forward as well as work towards improvement in the future.
Okay. Mayor Minto.
My comments are kind of based on the substitute motion, but I think we should go forward. But I think we also have to bring back some information. Councilmember Moreno, I think what's interesting, your comments about the splitting of communities and whatnot. So maybe in our mobility report, we can do a little bit of a historical look, because quite frankly, the communities you're talking about, the Freeway 15, 805 and whatnot, they didn't split diverse communities. Because believe it or not, back in those days when they started putting those in, they were not as diverse as they are today. And so maybe the question is not necessarily why were they divided, but how did we allow, or what allowed them to become segregated, as far as environmental justice over the years? Because I know, for instance, a lot of what's going on in North Park, City Heights and whatnot is the result of Council Member Henderson from the city of San Diego, who wanted to increase the population based on the fact that North Park and some of City Heights, which was not City Heights at the time, experienced a loss in business because of the opening of the Mission Valley Mall and the College Grove Mall. And so that increased the density there, which also increased, problems later on with the environment. So maybe we could get a more of a historical reference, if that makes any sense. And how did it get to where it's at today? I don't know, because I think we forget the history on that sometimes, where it started and how it started. Just some food for thought.
Mayor Krantz.
Yes, I support the substitute motion, hence my second. I think that the real work regarding transportation and transit, both public and private, is in the regional transportation plan and so many of the other things we do. The working group is really critical, but this report is not the vehicle, and it is somewhat, it's necessary to be submitted at a particular time. My main point, though, that I'd like to make is that judging transit systems based upon the broken transit system that's currently in place is unfair. And I would love to have an option to take public transit more from my home in Encinitas, but there aren't good options. So until we implement a transit system that works, even at the basic minimums, I think it's unfair to judge. We are an auto-centric community in Encinitas. I grew up I have lived a majority of my life between the Interstate 5 and the Losan corridor, and I would much prefer that we made significant investments in the public transit system so that I could leave my personal automobile home more often.
Who else is missing? Oh, Councilmember.
Thanks, Chair. I've spoken about before, I get concerned when I see terms like fiscal cliff. This continues to pop up, and I don't think there's any solution in sight. In the report, it mentions that MTS and NCTD are working on contingency plans. I'd love to see what those plans are, to see where they're looking at cost-saving measures. I've mentioned it over and over, and you may have seen on the news, we have a bus that comes through, a rapid bus that comes through our community for 15, 16 hours a day, mostly unridden. They say it's in 15-minute increments. Sometimes there's buses that back up 3 in a row in front of our Pier Plaza. And so, I think that as fiduciaries of taxpayer money, I'd like to see what's going to be done in the future to make the routes a little bit more efficient and perhaps look at where cuts need to be made.
With that, we have a motion and a second. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Also, I'm on the board, Chair.
And these aren't working.
Okay, Councilmember, so you were on the queue and then you were no longer on the queue, so I don't know what happened. So that's why I didn't call on you. Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. Just real briefly, I have an overall comment that I think relates to this item, but also it relates to sort of how we function. I think that if we have something, as my colleague was saying, who chairs the Transportation Committee, where they review an item and there's significant potential work or comments made by a policy advisory committee, it would be interesting to know that when the item comes to the board, if anything came of that. Were there any changes made? Did the committee have any effect on the item? I know I'm not accusing, a problem, but at least one time I know we had an item on consent that came out of the Transportation Committee that did not match the vote of what the Transportation Committee had voted, and we had to pull it. But again, if we're going to have these policy advisory committees where we spend hours and hours and hours working on items, I would just like to hopefully ensure that that work is reflected in what comes to the board. And
that should be practice.
Sorry?
Yeah, that should be common practice. So I don't know if it has happened in many instances, but I think that's something that the team should absolutely do.
Right, but I think it would be, and I guess my point is, it would be helpful, I think, to the board to know if there's changes that just came out of a meeting a week ago or, that was a long meeting that analyzed something for the board and it came here, whether there were changes made or recommended for the board to consider. And we may even want to, I'll be done now, but the last comment is we may even want to look, I think at some point holistically at all of our policy advisory committees, because I know we've had some that in 2 years I have never seen or heard anything from as a board member. And if that's how it's designed, it's fine, but it seems odd to me.
So both you, Councilmember, and Councilmember Shu are both on the Transportation Committee. Is there anything different that we need to know about?
No, it's a report, and to make comments on it is fine, but these reports took a lot of staff time over a long period of time to gather information and provide it to us. If we want additional information in the future, that's fair. We can ask staff to work on that, but that's for a future report. This is a report that goes forward that is required in our system. And I think I guess in my 4 years in government, I learned things move very slow. But staff works very hard, whether at SANDAG or my city, and we ask them to do things. They try to put it into the system for the next time it comes through. And if I'm still in office or I get reelected, then I get to see the results of that. But to ask them to change something now in a report that's took a lot of staff
No,
time.
I was just asking about
fair.
this particular item. Since both of you were there, I'm just asking on this particular item. Anything else?
We made some recommendations for staff, and I think they took that in good light.
All right. Yes, Councilmember. And I'll get you, Ms. Robin, in a minute.
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to say, Chair, thank you. This is a great example. I've agreed with what everyone has said. And Councilmember Moreno, I appreciate the need for increased presence of NPS at the San Isidro. And I've said over and over again, as I'm sure you've heard me say, we have an exorbitant amount of NPS transportation in Carlsbad that perhaps could be more utilized more efficiently elsewhere. So I appreciate the spirit of collaboration. And I could probably say something in appreciation to every board member, but Mayor Huebner, thank you for your thoughtful motion, and I definitely can support that and moving forward. Appreciate you.
Okay. Ms. Robin, thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Edson.
Oh, thank you.
No. It's because I thought Robin Maxon said she wanted to speak. Okay, never mind. Ms. Edson.
Yeah, no, it wasn't me.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Can somebody make sure this is
I just
working?
wanted to make a couple of comments. So I echo Mayor Kranz's comments with regard to greater investment in public transit being necessary for us to be able to really utilize the system. A lot of people can't utilize the system. It doesn't run often enough to get us to where we need to go, whether it's fixed rail or whether it's on demand. So we're working toward those things, and that's an important thing that's happening right now. The report did go before TC, and it clearly states at the top, the action is to approve that the Transportation Committee recommends that the Board of Directors approve the report for submission to the state legislature. So I don't think that that's a question. The item it's not tied to funding. NCTD would be happy to provide a debrief at a future NCTD or at a future SANDAG meeting should this board want that to happen. Also, coaster service continues to increase each year, especially during non-peak and on weekends, and is above pandemic ridership on weekends. The FY 2024 coaster ridership is 28% higher on weekends than it was pre-COVID. So I just wanted to make it clear. Thank you.
Else who has any comments, because this is not working right now? All right, seeing now we have a motion and a second. Can you call the vote, please?
Thank you. On the substitute motion, Carlsbad, Councilmember Burkholder.
Carlsbad, yes.
Chula Vista, Councilmember Chavez.
Chavez, yes.
Coronado, Mayor-elect Duncan.
Duncan, yes.
County of San Diego, Chairwoman Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
Del Mar, Mayor Drucker.
Drucker, yes.
El Cajon is absent. Encinitas, Mayor Kranz.
Yes.
Escondido, Councilmember Garcia.
Garcia, yes.
Imperial Beach, Councilmember Fisher.
Fisher, yes.
La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Let me see, yes.
Lemon Grove, Mayor Vasquez.
Yes.
National City Councilmember Molina.
Yes.
Oceanside Councilmember Robinson.
Yes.
Poway is absent. City of San Diego, Councilmember Moreno.
Moreno, yes.
San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, yes.
Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, yes.
Solana Beach, Second Vice Chair Hebner.
Yes.
And Vista, Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Melendez, yes.
Before I go to item number 9, can you all do me a favor and just press this thing once to see if it works? Once it's cleared, hold on.
0.
This, after she finishes this. Are you done? Yeah.
Oh, yes, that motion passed unanimously with those members present.
Okay, can you clear this again? Yeah. All right, so just press that once to see if it's.
What do you
working
want
for
us to
everybody.
press?
0.
Just
0 to speak, right?
to speak. Okay. Just press 0.
If you press 0 once, you come up in the queue. If you press it a second time, you disappear from the queue.
Yeah. All right, so it seems like it's working now. We're going to try it again. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I'm going to now turn it over to Ms. Amberlyn Deaton for role and scope of board council presentation.
Hi, actually, before Amberlyn speaks, I just want to mention that, she's here to talk about direction and gather information from the board on general counsel. Just a quick reminder that we do still need to hire an internal general counsel for the agency. So we really want to understand where the board wants to go and what your thoughts are on this so that we can make sure we're clear on duties as we start to embark on a recruitment process. So today we're looking for your discussion to help inform, our tasks that we have ahead of us. Thanks.
So before you begin, I just think, and I meant to share this before, it should say role and scope of independent board counsel because it's, I think that this, I just want to make sure everybody's okay with that because there's general counsel that you will continue to have as an entity because you need that, but this is related to the independent board counsel. Am I correct? That's what you're having. Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm just going to modify that on the agenda. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm Amberlyn Deaton. I'm SANDAG's Deputy General Counsel, and I'm one of the 6 attorneys who make up SANDAG's Office of General Counsel for the agency. I'm here today to hear from you about what you as a board would like to see, how you as a board would like to see legal services delivered for the agency. And so just by way of background, SANDAG has traditionally had a general counsel who is employed by the agency who reports to both the CEO and the board of directors. So in addition to providing support for the board of directors, the general counsel also oversees the Office of General Counsel, which provides the day-to-day legal support for the agency. And so with the recent retirement of the general counsel and the need to fill that function on a short-term basis, SANDAG initiated a 6-month pilot program, which borrows from a model that is utilized by other public agencies. And so an example of this contracted model comes from the Southern California Association of Governments, which is our MPO neighbor to the north. SCAG's chief counsel primarily supports management and staff with a direct reporting line to their executive director. And then as you can see, the board counsel directly advises their regional counsel and its advisory committees with a direct line to that counsel. And some similar examples of contracted legal support come from some of your jurisdictions as well, where some of your cities do not employ a city attorney, but contract out that function. And so with this model in mind, SANDAG initiated a limited competition between the firms on its current on-call bench for this type of services, and Alfred Smith from Nossaman was selected to serve as the board's counsel for this pilot period. And because this was for a limited purpose, the scope of the work for that pilot was limited to providing legal support to the board at its executive committee and board meetings only, with SANDAG's internal legal team continuing to support the policy advisory committees and then continuing to perform the agency's day-to-day legal work. And so looking forward, while we're only at the midpoint of this pilot period, there is some prep work that we will need to be doing soon should the board wish to continue to pursue this model of contracted independent board counsel, or should it wish to return to the model that the agency has traditionally used. Also, understanding the board's vision for its contracted counsel will allow the agency to better define the role of the general counsel for its upcoming recruitment, as Dawn mentioned. So today I'm hoping to get some feedback from you on a few items which will help support your next steps. And so this is just a few points to consider today, and it's by no means intended to limit or guide your discussion. Maybe the threshold question is there a desire to continue with this model of utilizing independent contract board counsel? And if so, does the board want to consider expanding the scope of those services to include its policy advisory committees as well? An additional question we'd appreciate some feedback on is how does the board want to participate in the selection of its board counsel? And then again, how can the board best communicate with or provide direction to that counsel? And so with that, I'm happy to listen and take direction from you today. Alfred is also here to provide some insight into the role that he has played with some of his other public agency comments, and we're both happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to, why don't we go ahead and turn it over for public comment, and then we're going to go ahead and have member comment.
Thank you. I have two in person that I'll start with. Truth, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Cesar Javier, and there are 3 virtual that will follow that.
All right, would there be continued contracted legal counsel because the board doesn't trust the in-house lawyers? I understand. How about another contracted CEO and chair and board too? I haven't seen any public positive changes in the agendas or in operations of the meetings by big government contractor Nosaman. So it seems like more of the people's money wasted. It seems wiser to spend that money on either projects or more project oversight. Example, Mario's got the new undisclosed amount CMS unit. Is the CMS unit accountable for mistakes now, or is it still the project managers? Or is it still the board? Or is it the CEO? And where's the city equity quota for project count? And how about putting a stop to all the reasons SANDAG has to be sued? You know, all the delayed projects, the messed up projects, the lies, the lost revenue, the lost tax dollars, and firing of people who should be here, if nothing else, to answer for their crimes. How about authenticity, transparency, and honesty surrounding decisions that certain staff makes behind everybody's backs? Raquel, how about SANDAG earns trust through truth? And then after you do it, buy me a patch so I can sew it on my jacket. Thank you.
Cesar Javier, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Catherine Rhodes.
Look back. Please look back. Is there a need of independent legal services? If so, why? Is there a perceived increase in violation after violations from either the contractors or the planners or the implementers? Please justify to the public. It's a waste of money or saving money? Remember Arasti. Public good must be available always and adequate, timely, efficiently, effectively, and it must solve the problem. Looks like we do not define the problem. I'm sorry, this is the guide. Let's be honest and wise. Let us use our 10 fingers, reasoning.
Your time has expired. Our next commenter, sir, your time has expired. Thank you. Catherine Rhodes, please go ahead.
Wonderful, Catherine Rhodes. And Chair Nora Vargas told Mario, and I believe also maybe the legal counsel, to have a meeting with me to go over my 20-year-old seismic concerns. And so far, Mario has just, you know, or the legal counsel just hasn't called me back. You know, I have solutions for the fiscal cliff, which is, you know, the FAA allowable use of airport revenue for transit in general. That could fix your fiscal cliff. But legal counsel never calls me back. They don't do anything for you now. I think your old legal counsel had such bad legal advice that it seems like an independent person would be good, but this independent person is ignoring me also. So I don't know what to tell you. If he hasn't, if he doesn't have an answer of is San Diego violating, the Alcas Parola law? Does he know that or does he not? Or has he not looked into that, even though it's been at least 2 weeks since he's known about it? How about the FAA money? Does he know anything about it? Thank you.
Our next commenter, Paul DeVol, please go ahead.
I got an idea why you might need legal counsel to stop lawsuits from reaching the point where the board needs to discuss them. But Al Smith seems like he'd be good at that, solving your lawsuits. And Berlin too. Personally, I do not see why you even need outside counsel. I mean, is this not a duplicative service? I mean, and the time they take to go back and forth and get these legal decisions to you in a timely manner, I mean, that would be a total waste of time and money and effort. Moreover, we do not have either regular legal reports or audit reports, so I'm not sure why it even matters, except that you seem to be paying less to the outside firm, except I'm sure, given the overall.
Your time expired. Our final commenter for number 672, please go ahead.
Okay, ditto to all the previous speakers. Yeah, just more waste of the taxpayers' money, more waste of time, no solutions. It's gosh, what a joke. What a freaking joke. But just wanted to make a note to the people who aren't there. Who are sick. Magnesium, iodine, and Nora, for your illness, stop telling lies and stop being corrupt. Bully.
That concludes the public comments.
All right. So just as a reminder on this item, if I remember correctly, this came out of conversations or recommendations from OIPA, right? Do you all remember that? There was about the independent counsel. There was some recommendations on that. And there was also recommendations from board members to try to see this model. And so we've had independent counsel for 3 months, but we've also talked about what is the role of independent counsel. We haven't had that conversation as a board, and that's part of what we're doing today. My experience with independent counsel was very positive. It was specifically to CalSTRS, the California Teacher Retirement Board, which was a $285 billion pension board. And what independent counsel did is they were at every meeting and were able to provide items. I think because we haven't defined the role of counsel here, I think it hasn't been, I'm not sure that we've utilized it to the level that we should, right? We asked questions about Brown Act, et cetera, but it was much more specific to them actually providing reports and information. And if an item was coming up, turning over to them to say, okay, what is your analysis of this? How does this work, et cetera, and providing actual reports and information to us prior to board meetings, et cetera. So it was a much more robust partnership with the board versus just having somebody here to say sort of, yes, you can do that. No, you can't do that. Because to me, I don't think that that's very efficient. To me, it seems like what we need is actually, because I support having an independent counsel. I think it's a good idea. But I do believe that we have to be very clear about what that role is for the independent counsel, including ensuring that on items that we are discussing, that we get that feedback that we need. And so anyway, I'll open it up now for discussion with my colleagues. Councilmember Duncan.
I think I may have still been on the queue from previously practice queuing, but I will be happy because I do have some comments. Thank you, Chair. In general, I agree with you. I like the idea of an independent counsel. I think we do need to, as you state, define the role. When I'm reviewing the report, it talks about providing advice and counsel to staff and management as well as part of the current duties. I'm sorry. So to me, that's a little bit, it's interesting, like where are the lines, right, of the independent board council versus our general counsel? And we've never had the chance really as a board to see the dynamic play out where previously we had a general counsel here at the meetings. And, you know, there were certain issues and things where I think having the independent counsel there would have been very helpful, but we haven't really had those two at the same time. So for me, that's a consideration to talk about. Are we going to, if we do have an independent counsel, have both a general counsel here for SANDAG and then an independent counsel for the board, or is it just going to be the independent board counsel? And then, as you mentioned earlier, I am a big supporter of part of the roles. For instance, we have an item on today's agenda that I would like an independent counsel for the board's advice in writing, really like a report on some of the parameters of what we could do or not do, because that isn't clear from the staff report to me that that's been analyzed by legal counsel and what really the advice is. So I'm supportive of it is with the caveat that we have defined parameters, as I believe you were suggesting as well, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing that item up specifically about them being also counsel for staff and management. I actually don't think that that's appropriate. I think that there should be dialogue or sharing of information. You can do that. I mean, we literally had independent counsel and legal counsel. We're just not fighting, but championing different perspectives in front of us. And that was very healthy, I think, for the entity. And then in the end, the board made the decision, but it wasn't like, let me tell you what to do, because then otherwise, why would you need general counsel, right? That would be to your point. So, all right, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I actually totally agree with that as well. You know, I'm going to give you an example of what I think it would be important to have our own legal counsel. So what happened with RENA, for instance? So we were getting the information from the attorney that was representing the actual agency, but our individual needs, like for instance, Coronado and Lemon Grove, you both had differences of opinion. I think it would be very important for us to have a council that represents us, so that when we're representing our cities, we have our unique needs. And so I think that's an important part of it. So I think 6 months is, I honestly would like to see it be a full year, to move forward to a full year, which would be September to September, because I think we'll have a better idea of that, if that's actually working or not, because I feel like it's 3 months in. And, you know, back to the point of, we haven't really had any situations where I have felt like, okay, I really need to talk to someone and I really need that information. I think moving forward with the 2025 update, it's going to be far more important for us to feel that we have someone representing each one of our individual agencies, you know, on behalf of us as board members. So anyway, those are just my comments about that. I think 1 year would be an appropriate thing. I don't know that we need to have that as codified, but if we would, I would say that let's have September to September as a pilot project. And I guess that would be my motion, if that's appropriate at this time, so that we can get a full understanding and a good sense of whether that actually is going to be successful or not.
That's fine. Happy to second the motion. So Deputy Mayor Melendez, you were on and then you were off. You're good? Okay, wonderful. Councilmember Burkholder, wait, you were on and then now you're not. You still want to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
You are Chula Vista, Encinitas, and Solana Beach. I just want to make sure, because for some reason, stop playing with the little thing. Just kidding. Go ahead.
I'm so being picked on today. Mayor Jones, I appreciate your comments. I just wanted some clarification with council who might represent board members. Is my understanding that that council will go back to our city's council and collab with them to come back to the board? I'm just trying to figure out delineating role for general counsel for the board, because we all have city attorneys. So especially with the RENA example that you gave, I'm just trying to figure out because I'm happy to support. I just want to make clear what we're supporting here. Thank you.
I want to clarify, my understanding is that they don't necessarily go and work with your legal counsels. They work directly with us as board members. And now if you have an item that you would like to be able to further discuss with your legal counsel, I'm sure that they can have a conversation. But I think it would be really tough. Imagine the hours that are going
Right.
to be used if you're asking him to talk to all 18 general counsel. I think that would be a bit much, but I think what
Therein
they
lies
do
the
is-
clarification of
Yeah,
my question.
So
Yeah.
that is my understanding. Does anybody understand something different, Emily?
Just to, if it's helpful, so the council would be counsel to this board, but of course, you could consider part of that scope of work to be coordinating with your city's legal counsel on an as-needed basis or as directed by you.
That's the way I would see it too. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor.
Thank you, Chair. I could not agree more with the statements that have been going around. I think it's the independence of the board council is crucial and should be ensured by having the board select them in a manner similar to the CEO selection, because I think it's almost not as important, but it's the same level of importance into advising us and to have that liberty that sometimes we felt we didn't have with previous councils that were so close to the CEOs and that, you know, maybe had these private meetings where we weren't involved and maybe, you know, they hashed it out without ever coming to us first. So I will be supporting, I think that what Rebecca Jones mentioned previously is very accurate. I will be supporting an approach to establish a clean chain of command. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yes, so I've always had concerns about the organizational structure and the representation of general counsel. And, you know, I bring to this concern my experience over the 12 years that I've served. As a city council member, you learn pretty quickly there are two people you get to be involved in hiring and dismissing, and one is the city manager and the other is the city attorney. And those evaluations are always handled independently so that the attorney knows they don't work for the manager, they work for the city council. And I haven't had that feeling here. And I think that's the important issue is how these organizational structures, I don't think the dotted line works very well. And the SCAG model isn't good to me because it puts the board council off to the side and maybe not present in some of the key decisions that are made by staff and the operational folks in the agency. So my preference, my recommendation would be that the agency have a general counsel that serves both the board as well as staff, but isn't dependent upon the relationship or recommendations that they make to continuing to serve. So in other words, not influenced by the CEO in a way with losing their job. And that ultimately that's the decision of the board. One of the great models that I have seen in operation is the North County Transit District, which I participated early on in my service there, somewhere around 2013. We hired Lori Winfrey as a general counsel. Previously, they had contract general counsel with Best and Krieger, and bringing a general counsel on staff to monitor and oversee many of the legal matters in the agency was critical. It did definitely help that Lori Winfrey is one of the most competent, capable lawyers that I've ever met. So I know that's a big part of it, finding the right person. But ultimately, whoever gets hired is going to benefit from knowing that they are held accountable by the board and not by the CEO.
Mayor Krantz, I really appreciate those comments, and I'm wondering, are you asking to make an amendment to this motion so that not only are we asking for an independent board counsel, but then also the restructuring or reformulating how general counsel looks like? You don't have to. I'm just asking because
No, I think
your
that's a great
comments.
idea. I think you made a great motion there. I don't need to make it, and I'm a short timer here, and on my way out the door, I just wanted to comment that what I've seen, the way this agency has worked,
Yeah,
would greatly
be really
benefit
powerful.
by having legal counsel that knew that they could come to the board with an issue and not have to worry about keeping their job, other than if the board didn't like the work that
Yeah.
they had done.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
And perhaps if I could just offer up a little nuance there. SANDAG's enabling legislation currently states that there are only 2 positions that the board participates in the hiring and oversight, and that is the CEO and the independent performance auditor. And all other positions, including the general counsel position as it currently stands, are appointed by and overseen by the CEO. So should the board want to explore something along those lines, I just wanted to plant that seed that it may also need to consider a legislative change.
But I do appreciate that. I do think, though, a motion could be made, and then independent legal counsel can come back and let us know how we actually make that happen, either a change through the legislative process. It might take longer, but I'm thinking as an organizational structure component, sort of, that actually can be done. I don't know, maybe, but I don't have all the details for that. So, do you know?
Thank you. Yeah, I could take a closer look at it, but I would think that would be in the discretion of the board as to how you want to define your program. Yeah, I can take a closer look at that, but I would think, it will be within the discretion of the board how you want the reporting of your legal counsel to work. But I can look at that.
Well, and I would agree, sorry, Chair, being that I made the motion. I would agree that it should be that we are in charge of that, not the CEO at the time. So if we need to make a board policy change, I'd be open to doing that. However, you would suggest us moving forward, being that you're here representing us. I'd be willing to change my motion to add whatever we needed to achieve that.
Go ahead, Mayor Montoya.
I would second that change in motion.
I don't think that could be done at the board level as a motion because from what you're telling me is state law. So that means we have to find ourselves a state legislature to change a policy on the board.
Yeah,
We
so
can't just change it
That's
ourselves.
why I said that I wanted to make sure that we make that recommendation. So you can make the amendment and then make the recommendation. And if it comes back that it's not something that we can do through policy or as an organizational management issue, which I actually think that there should be a way to do that. But if there isn't, then we would recommend to a state legislature that could do that. And we have really good ones that I think would understand what
No,
this is.
I agree. I just wanted to make it clear that, we can talk about all the policy that we want at this board level, but the only real recommendation we can make is to find a state legislature to change the way we govern, because that's how we are set up, is under that state legislation. I've heard all the conversation, and I think what we should maybe do also, I don't think we could do anything today, obviously, and we kind of had a side conversation here. It's like, this is so complicated and complex that we really need a lot more information. One of the things I think we might want to hear is have somebody, maybe even the independent auditor, look at other MPOs in the state or maybe other regions and see how they are structured. And because maybe, and I hate to say this because I don't want anybody to lose jobs, but maybe the difference is, just in-house versus just contract. And of course, if it's just contract is the way we go, then we have in-house attorneys that could lose a job or maybe be even absorbed by another firm. But the reason why I say that is because it's great to have your in-house, but you know what? When you go with an outside firm, generally they have so many attorneys on the staff.
I don't want to interrupt you, Mayor, but that's not what's on the discussion on the table. The discussion on the table, it could be, but that's not the discussion on the table. The discussion on the table is having a general counsel that has a direct report to the board of directors, which is very different. They still would have a general counsel here at SANDAG that would have a team, but it's sort of like the way the general counsel works at the County of San Diego. Our general counsel is hired and fired by us 5 board members, and we every year we go ahead and do whatever goals and objectives. We give her recommendations. She has a team of, I don't know, 1,000 people who are doing the work of the people every day. But she works directly with us. She has a great relationship with the CAO and all of the other departments and teams, but her job and, works directly with us. So I'm not, in any way, I want to make sure that I put this on the record. I'm not suggesting that we contract out for legal counsel. The conversation that we're having is that if it's possible to have a general counsel that directly reports hired and fired by the board of directors, that would be the motion that is before us. And in addition to that, we are also talking, because the motion started with the role and the scope of our independent board counsel. It is the appetite and the interest of this board at this moment that we do have an independent board counsel that represents us, that works directly with the board of directors that we get to hire and fire. And it has been recommended that this position for now is a pilot program for a year. We had hired them for 3 months, but we're recommending that it's a year. And in addition to that, we're going to be able to be working on scope, right? Understanding what the laws are, understanding everything else. But I want to make sure that, including the staff that's hearing, there is no conversation right now about doing away with general counsel, the office, unless there's some different appetite from the board.
Okay, I think I just misunderstood the way the conversation was going.
Okay, no.
So,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Can I also just make a comment from my experience in terms of, one of the things I've seen, and I think there's a distinction when you talk about the enabling legislation, like what you do in terms of having your in-house general counsel. But if the board decides to do something by contract, I think that's a different issue. So I think you have that within your discretion to do that by contract. And I think one of the reasons, OIPA recommended this, and this has been my experience with other agencies, the independence, the direct contact where you could all just reach out to me directly and you don't have to deal with the issue of, what if I disagree with the general counsel, but at the end of the day, or the CEO, but then at the end of the day, he's doing my performance evaluation. There's an inherent tension there. And I think it's really a best management practice that I've seen at a lot of the large, I've seen different models, for the smaller agencies, I've seen, some have all outside, some have all inside. But for a very large multi-jurisdictional agency like SANDAG, there's such a large volume of work. You do need the in-house attorneys to handle that on a day-to-day basis. But then you have the independent board counsel to handle those matters. And I think it really enhances the independence, the transparency, leading to more full information. When you have issues such as if there's a difference of opinion between the attorney, the CEO, or if you have situations where a contractor is recommending one thing, but then the staff is recommending one thing, having that independent analysis. And I know that I'm reporting to and directly accountable to you. That's generally considered a best management practice, and a lot of times you'll see your auditing folks really back that up.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Just to echo Mayor Krantz's comments and some of the comments of council, a lot of the local agencies, mine including, have the enabling legislation that does have 3 direct reports: the CEO, the general counsel, and the auditor. And the general, the hire, fire, and review relationship clarifies who that person reports to. And my only concern with 2 lawyers, one outside, one inside, is the outside lawyer getting all the information they need? Are they in those meetings where some decisions are made, as I think Mayor Krantz noted? And so at least from the several agencies I've served on, that council relationship where the board hires, fires, reviews, the entity's general counsel, it makes it very clear who they work for and where the loyalties are. And so I do think, at least in my experience, that's been probably the best model, and it may very well require enabling legislation. But again, there are a ton of local agencies that have precisely that model that you can just point to as the best practice.
All right. I have Mayor Hidden.
Yeah, thank you. So I remember way back when AB 805 was being crafted, and at the time, Mayor Mary Sessom from Lemon Grove and Deputy Mayor Lisa Schaefer from Encinitas and myself wrote a letter to than Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez suggesting an independent council be put in there, but it wasn't. So we don't have the enabling legislation. But I'm interested in what you just said, Al, and that is that we have the ability to contract as a board. And so would that be our way to do it? Or do you think it needs, I mean, just first blush, do you think it needs enabling legislation?
At first blush, I'd like to go back and look at, the enabling legislation specifically to see how it's worded. But my experience with other agencies has been something that's been able to be done by contract.
Okay, I think that'd be great. I think the most important thing is, as you just said, that we're the ones who hire, we're the ones who fire, we're the ones who review. And the interaction between the general counsel and then the outside external, that's, TBD. I'd kind of like to explore that a little bit more. The other idea, the other concept that's on our request from you, Amber Lynn, to discuss is the PACs. Right now, we have general counsel sitting in on the PACs, not our external independent. If we were to ask for that, I know in our city, for our PACs, what is the, like the PACs, we have the, a lower level, lower price, we'll put it that way, lower price attorneys who sit in with our commissions. So I don't know if that's something that is possible in the RFP that would ever go out. The other thing is, I think what's really needed is for a conversation amongst the board and the current independent council just to discuss a lot of these concepts and how they can be used, just maybe a separate item, maybe a workshop or something. Maybe we do this at the board retreat where we discuss how we would like to utilize the independent council. The other thing that I just want to reflect upon is that when the small cities had their lawsuit, it was definitely clear that we needed to have an independent council for sure. So anyway, the other thing that was how we select it, so that's the hiring, and how we communicate with the independent external counsel. So that's another area. I mean, do we want, I really personally don't think it would make a whole lot of sense to have the independent council of SANDAG be constantly in contact with our councils for our jurisdictions as an as needed basis, of course, but not like a constant thing. Those are my only real comments, besides the fact that I really think this is very a great idea and needed, and look forward to the future process.
So far, everybody seems to be on the same page, so I think, but Mayor Drucker.
Yes, I have two opinions here. One is based upon what the audit committee wants to do. One, audit committee needs to have a independent counsel as we dig into various issues, and that needs to continue on. The other comment is agreeing with Tony that ultimately the counsel for the SANDAG entity should be hired by the board, and it should be independent of the staff. The Office of the General Counsel will have various employees that are going to be working directly with staff, but ultimately their authority comes from the board, and the board should be the ones that are hiring them. So I support this motion to extend the pilot program and analyze the process for changing the hiring and oversight responsibility for the general counsel from the chief executive officer to the board of directors. I think this is an important step. Every city, every entity in the county of San Diego does it this way. And again, the audit committee is pretty much very supportive of the concept of having the general counsel report directly to the board.
Commissioner, let's see, who am I looking for? Malcolm, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to agree with what I've heard here. Mayor Krantz is exactly right. Mayor Drucker, the same, and Chairman Cabrera. The Port of San Diego, that's the way we do it, is our general counsel is a direct report to the board. I believe that ultimately in any public agency, the board is the ultimate area of accountability. Not the CEO, it's the board is accountable to the people. And so the general counsel should be a direct report in the board. So I think that enabling legislation needs to be looked at and the box needs to be changed to where the general counsel is accountable to the board. The board hires and fires. The board does the review every year. And certainly just for your edification, what we do at the port is that our general counsel, understanding that we have a lot of legal needs in the board, in addition to essentially a law office that we have at the Port of San Diego that deals with all our projects, we enable our general counsel to go out and hire contract counsel on an as-needed basis and pursuant to a budget that is put before us at the beginning of the year. So ultimately, the board is also accountable to that budget and to that expenditure. So I think the direction you're going is the right direction, and I certainly concur with the comments that I've heard here.
Thank you. So on the motion, it says motion to accept, and give me a minute, Councilmember Duncan. So motion to extend the pilot program for independent board counsel to 1 year until September 2025. I would add for the independent board counsel to also, I'm looking over here, I don't know why, but to report to the board of directors. And that doesn't need, that doesn't actually need any, what is it called? Legislation. Are you okay with that? Okay. Okay. All right, we can then put a period and then the second, it would start with direct current board counsel to analyze the process for changing the hiring oversight responsibility for the general counsel from the chief executive officer to the board of directors. Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. Just real briefly, I agree with the comments about the enabling legislation. So literally, potentially the board may not be able to buy its own without anything else hire and fire necessarily, or, but I don't think we're doing anything wrong by going forward in this manner. I think we could also have, because again, the CEO serves at our pleasure. So to a certain extent, if we need his permission for something, we could certainly ask his permission. And then if it's denied, we can take that into account. But separately, I just wanted to say, I do think a parallel track of looking at two options for enabling legislation change and whether that's feasible would be a worthwhile and potentially not very costly thing to look at.
And just for clarification from both legal counsel at this time, is it enabling legislation and or policy? Because I think I want to make sure that if there is a loophole in there that we can actually just change policy as a board to be able to do that. I don't know why you couldn't. It could be under an organizational administrative tool, but I don't know, because it's such a very unique entity. So I don't know if you need that to be able to expand it, because I don't want you to have to come back and say, actually, you can do it through legislation, through policy.
I mean, I guess my point is I believe there's 3 or 4 ways legally we can do what we're doing.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're directing it.
Yeah, but I think adding to make it easier and clearer for the future to be able to do it under the enabling legislation would be simpler.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean I think we can do what we're doing. But so it's up to you. Did you say you wanted to add that will be looked at? I guess analyze the process for changing the hiring and oversight would cover it. You believe? That's fine.
Yeah, I just need clarification from attorneys.
Yeah, I'm a little unclear because it said the hiring and oversight responsibility for the general counsel from the chief executive.
That's for the general counsel.
That's not for me. That's for
No,
the
the
general.
general.
Okay, gotcha. Want to be clear on that.
Yep. Are you good with that? ma'am?
Whatever is most clear, and I totally agree with all of it. So yes, whatever's most clear, I'm 100%.
And the second was made by, who made the second?
I think it was Tony.
You're good? Yeah. Okay, we're good. All right, I don't see any other discussion.
I have
Thank you.
one more question here. I'm trying to understand this motion here. So analyze the process for changing the hiring oversight responsibility for the general counsel from the chief.
It's a two-component action.
It's a two-component action. So the idea is that the general counsel, so you're talking about the general counsel for the agency inside would actually report to the board of directors. Right, right. And that part might be a little more tricky to look at in terms of
Yes,
enabling
that's what I
legislation.
want you to do. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I think it was a different analysis for the internal general secret versus the outside board counsel. Right.
They analyze the process. So that's what
Yes, yes. So we're taking 2 actions in 1 motion. And the first one can actually be done immediately. And the second one is going to take some work, but hopefully it's sooner than later, right? Okay. All right. Can we go ahead and call the vote, please?
Carlsbad, Councilmember Burkholder.
Carlsbad, yes.
Chula Vista, Councilmember Chavez. Coronado, Mayor-elect Duncan.
Yes.
County of San Diego, Chairwoman Vargas. Del Mar, Mayor Drucker.
Drucker, yes.
El Cajon is absent. Encinitas, Mayor Kranz.
Kranz, yes.
Escondido, Councilmember Garcia.
Garcia, yes.
Imperial Beach, Councilmember Fisher.
Fisher, yes.
La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Lemay, yes.
Grove, Mayor Vasquez.
Lemon Grove, yes.
City Councilmember Molina.
Yes.
Oceanside, Councilmember Robinson.
Yes.
Poway is absent. City of San Diego, Councilmember Moreno.
Moreno, yes.
San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, yes.
Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, yes.
Solana Beach, Second Vice Chair Hebner.
Yes.
And Vista, Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Melendez, yes.
The motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, thank you, Emily. The next item on the agenda is the proposed fiscal year 2025 program budget amendment, border climate adaptation, environmental justice plan. I'm going to turn it over to Kim.
I'm going to kick it off before I hand it over to Kim to go into the details. So at your July meeting, you directed staff to establish a temporary working group to address environmental concerns, including but not limited to the transborder sewage issues in the border region. And the transborder flow of sewage is obviously a very serious environmental justice issue, but it is not the only one that the residents of the South Bay face. Air quality impacts from diesel exhaust and particulate matter, from all of the idling in the border region, ongoing sedimentation and litter are all major issues. And these issues are only expected to get worse with the significant population growth that's expected in the border region and, of course, climate change. So in response, we are recommending a two-prong approach to address this issue. The first came up at your executive committee 2 weeks ago, and that is really advocating for additional federal and state funding to address the sewage issue and including it in our legislative platform. So to date, the IWBC, the International Wastewater and Boundary Commission, has received $415 million to repair and expand the international treatment plant, but at least another $200 million is needed to be able to complete that work. The good news is, though, on Monday, November 18th, the White House sent Congress an emergency supplemental funding request that includes $310 million to address sewage pollution in the Tijuana River Valley. And if this goes through, it would fully fund the rehabilitation and expansion of the international wastewater treatment plant. The second part of our recommendation is for the development of a comprehensive and holistic plan to address the environmental issues along the border, including sewage pollution. And so after your July board meeting, we got to work to seek funding. We were able to secure a $3 million grant from Caltrans to develop that plan. We've had a lot of conversations with other government agencies and stakeholders on both sides of the border, and everyone is asking for one plan to address the environmental issues, and that does not exist yet today. There is a border master plan, but it is specific to transportation, and that was developed by Caltrans and the state of Baja California. It's called the Border Master Plan. It was ultimately adopted by the Federal Highway Administration. But by accepting the funds today, we'll be able to develop a similar plan for environmental justice issues, and that will fill this gap. And this could ultimately then become an addendum to the Border Master Plan. This work will be guided by a new environmental work group, and we've included the draft charter for that group today, and this is in response to your direction. So I'm going to hand it over to the team here with Kim Smith at the helm to go over the scope for the grant and answer any questions that you have before we ask you to accept the Caltrans grant funding today.
Thank you, Antoinette. Good morning, Chair Vargas and members of the board. My name is Kim Smith, and I'm a senior regional planner here at SANDAG. I'm joined today with my colleagues, Zach Hernandez and Keith Greer, to present the Border Climate Adaptation and Environmental Justice Plan. And as Antoinette just described, this plan is part of SANDAG's two-prong approach to address environmental issues along our border. So we and the other 7.3 million people who call the California-Baja California border region home are very fortunate. We share a very diverse and rich region with shared economies, populations, and some of the most diverse natural ecosystems you can find. We understand the urgency of your request to address the environmental health crisis facing our South Bay cities, not just the transborder sewage issue, but other environmental justice impacts such as poor air quality, affecting the communities living along our border today. These issues are only expected to get worse with climate change. Severe storms, flooding, wildfires, and extreme heat waves are only exacerbating these environmental impacts. We've seen photos in the paper, and maybe I know some of you here today have lived through those experiences shown above. Flooding and beach closures in Imperial Beach, either from sea level rise or extreme precipitation, have increased our impacts to water quality. Or there's extreme heat causing drought-fueled dust storms, smoke from wildfires, and poor air quality due to hot, stagnant air common during heat waves. In many cases, the lack of a comprehensive binational and coordinated planning approach to get ahead of these issues has contributed to the crisis that we are facing today. In response, we coordinated with Caltrans on a sustainable transportation planning grant proposal that allows SANDAG and partner agencies to develop one comprehensive plan to address those climate adaptation and environmental justice issues occurring within those vulnerable communities throughout our border region. So we would not be starting from scratch, but we would be building on many years of prior and ongoing work done by our border region communities, agencies, and stakeholders. On the screen above is just a tiny fraction of a long list of existing projects, programs, working groups, and initiatives working towards common environmental goals. We recognize there are many overlapping efforts currently at work at both the federal, state, and local level. We do not want to duplicate efforts or reinvent the wheel. In addition, there is also research being done by academia and efforts being led by non-governmental and community-based organizations and other stakeholder groups. So like the 2021 California-Baja California Border Master Plan, which prioritizes, coordinates, and plans the delivery of transportation projects at the border, this plan would provide the same approach, a comprehensive regional lens to prioritizing environmental and climate adaptation issues within the border region. Our plan will focus on the communities 10 miles to the north and south of the border, starting from the Pacific Ocean, extending east to the California-Arizona border. The slide above outlines some of the specific components that will be included in the plan. Essentially, this plan would act as a platform to pull all the existing work together, find out how the border region can come together to better support what's already being done, identify ways to partner on new strategies, and build towards more coordinated action on environmental issues. So what can you anticipate? What are the outcomes of this plan? Well, like I said before, it's going to be one location that summarizes the work currently being done, the gaps that exist, and the challenges. We're going to be building consensus around a list of prioritized strategies, programs, policies, and projects among binational public agencies and non-governmental organizations. This will give us the resources to advocate for these projects in the region when potential opportunities for funding come along, such as the renegotiation of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement or potential funding opportunities through NADBank. Finally, and maybe most importantly, it will maintain and strengthen binational coordination on climate and environmental justice issues affecting the border region. So to support this effort, we are proposing that policy guidance for the plan be provided by our Borders Committee with technical support from the project development team and the newly created Border Environmental Task Force. And we feel this structure will provide additional flexibility for binational participation by allowing for remote meeting attendance and meetings hosted in other locations. The project development team will include SANDAG, Caltrans, who will be administering the grant, Southern California Area of Governments, or SCAG, for their work in Imperial County, and the state of Baja California. The new Border Environmental Task Force, shown in green on the slide above, would consist of binational representatives from federal, state, local, and tribal governments. For example, the cities of Imperial Beach, Coronado, Chula Vista, the County of San Diego, City of Tijuana, could include the US EPA, IBWC, and also some of those nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations listed above. For more information on the task force, please refer to the draft task force charter in attachment 2 of your report. In addition, as I mentioned previously, so much of this plan will consist of working with existing environmental groups, forums, and task force, such as those listed above. Now moving on to our anticipated timeline for the plan. So following approval of the fiscal year 25 budget amendment and acceptance of this grant, we hope to begin work in early 2025 with convening of our Border Environmental Task Force and beginning our stakeholder and community engagement. In the spring and summer, we will will consist of compiling existing information, identifying those gaps, climate and environmental justice vulnerabilities, as well as developing metrics criteria for the analysis. The bulk of 2026 will be dedicated to the development of those climate adaptation strategies and a list of projects, programs, and plans, with the draft plan being presented to the board near the end of the year. And then finally, in April of 2027, this is when our grant will be ending and where you can anticipate a final plan. With your approval today, staff is ready to get to work. We are ready to begin forming the PDT and forming our task force. We hope to hold our first meeting in February and March of 2025, where our first item of business would be to discuss water quality issues, including the transborder sewage issue, identifying, who's working in that space, identifying what projects are currently ongoing, are planned, the challenges and the gaps. We're then going to be moving into identifying what other efforts are out there, what existing groups are working in the other environmental impacts. And then we will begin developing our public participation and stakeholder outreach plan. Oh, that concludes my presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions you may
I was
have.
just waiting for your cue. All right. Let me go ahead and turn it over to Councilmember Chavez. Oh, actually, public comment first.
Thank you. I will take public comment now on item number 10, Truth. Please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Cesar Javier and then Mark. And then I have 3 virtual that will follow after that.
All right, take note that fixed treatment plants are not the same as fixing the polluted Tijuana River. Why did it take Caltrans decades to realize there's a problem? And increased transportation projects by Caltrans are the opposite of environmental justice. This $3 million task force bureaucracy under the Borders Committee will have zero power. Almost half the cost is going to go to salaries and benefits. And why borders when they have yet to even really do anything towards the sewage crisis? Who decided who the stakeholders are? And isn't the entire county considered a border region? So shouldn't a city like Oceanside have a say? No to the task force, no to EPA involvement when they fell for 40 years on the Border 2025 program. And no to borders who are showing a clear bias in favor of not the #1 trading partner, as Luz called them, but the #1 polluter, Mexico. Why would the environmental justice plan end in 2027? Is that connected to the OME toll? Or is the #1 polluter going to suddenly clean up their act by 2027? And we don't need any more data. If you're confused, go to Imperial Beach at 6 p.m. and breathe deep. However, I will say that downtown San Diego smells a lot worse.
Your time expired. Cesar Javier, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Mark.
This organization is healthy. The associations have their own weapons, arsenals, ammunitions, money, food, clean water, clean food. They are ready. Why do we have to hire mercenaries to protect our unit? Come to think of it, we use our counsel on our respective political structure. We have the attorney's office. We have the audit budget office. Why do we have to hire? That's a waste of money. Let's use the money for the homeless, sick, and dying citizen of this great republic. Military representative is hearing me loud and clear. It's a violation of the principle of objective, the principle of mass, and the principle of maneuver. How do we win this war? Tell me.
Your time has expired. I will go on to our first virtual commenter, Paul the Bold. Sir, your time has expired. Paul the Bold, please go ahead.
Mark was next. Hello? Mark was next.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark. Please go ahead.
Mark, 23 billion for your purple line and no federal funding for your climate action plan. Guess who's going to pay for that? Us taxpayers. You're going to try and raise the taxes or some scam tax hidden. Border master plan, yeah, the cartel's got to get those drugs through much faster. So I'm sure that'll be efficient. Jack Shu, it's not a direct quote, but I believe you basically said that by 2050, if we got the Purple Line through, there would be no need for the freeways. None of the public knows about this, by the way, not even the most far-left Democrats, and nobody would like it. Stakeholder engagement means the people who will profit off your SANDAG scam. And regarding the Mexico-U.S. trade agreement, which is treason, Chapter 30 of the USMCA, which Trump signed and Biden did not rescind. If you see the YouTube video, Goodbye American Sovereignty, Hello USMCA, you'll see what a scam that is. We only have one American member who's not elected.
Your time has expired. And this time, Paul DeBold, please go ahead.
Thanks. This is one idea I can get behind. However, it looks like you're assembling a task force to reexamine, if not reinvent, the wheel. There are two huge stressors in this region, BESS and exploding EV batteries. They're toxic, cause mass evacuations, prolong or create wildfires, and use a heck of a lot of resources, fire personnel, water, and so on to put them out. So get over your South Bay focus. The TJ River Valley pollution problem has been going on for years. The major players are finally stepping up to the plate and doing something about it. Others are actually fixing things already, like the people installing removable barriers to dam up sewage. There are a lot of minor stressors, from lithium mining side effects to garbage and pollution in general, to plastics and so on. Look into these.
Your time expired. Our next commenter, Catherine Rhodes, please go ahead.
Wonderful. Hi, Catherine Rhodes. And as you guys know, our congressional delegation put in Congressional Bill 5075 in September that will make EPA the lead agency as it relates to everything. But the EPA is not even a non-voting member of SANDAG. So the first thing I think that and I'm very positive about this, of course, but the first thing I think you should do is you should invite the EPA to be a member of SANDAG so that somebody from the EPA will be able to answer everybody's questions all the time. And then also, the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, it's going to be redone next year under President Trump. And maybe at that time, we could actually, go through the State Department and get all the maquiladoras not to pollute and put in, toxic stuff into the Tijuana River that comes down into the.
Your time expired. Our final commenter on this item, phone number 672, please go ahead. You're self-muted.
Hi. So, yeah, one thing we all have to start really doing is critically thinking. Had decades to solve this. They've had the money to solve this. They've had the technology to solve this issue. And here we are, 2024, and it's still not the same. It's still the same. It's crazy. Anyway, so the fact that, even climate change, this made-up catastrophe used by globalists and socialists to instill fear and guilt, to tax, regulate, and remove our freedoms while pretending to be saving the planet. That's not what I wanted to say, but yeah, I just go with that. Carbon reduction is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Let's just be real about that. Actually, way more when you think about it. What a cash cow. Let's see. Can you hear me? Am I still?
Your time expired, and that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you so much for this presentation. And I just need to emphasize how much coordination and efforts are needed with the state of Baja California and the new federal government of Mexico. I would love to see moving forward an action plan on how we're outreaching. I know our new our recently elected CEO has a great relationship with all levels of government in Mexico, especially when working in Otay Mesa East. And I think it's a very, very important piece of information that we add this to our presentation moving forward, how we're working with them. And I mean, aside from mentioning that our House of Representatives in Congress recently secured $310 million specifically for this and for the water treatment plants and everything that's happening across the border. We can't think of ourselves like an island, right? We breathe the same air. We obviously use the same beaches, the same water. So moving forward, can I ask that from this group presentation that we add specifically the progress that we make with the Mexican government and the commitments that are being established moving forward with all these federal funds and local funds. And especially, I think SANDAG is the perfect agency. We've been talking about this in the Borders Committee alongside Transportation and Regional Planning committees. I think moving forward, please add this. I need to see the progress that is also being made because Baja does talk about them securing federal funds as well. So why don't we jointly see this presentation from you? Thank you.
Commissioner Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. And the reason why the port is commenting on this item, it may not seem logical. However, we have been granted the state lands from the Mexican border, the beach all along Imperial Beach, and the waters. And so to a great extent, the Port of San Diego, on behalf of the state of California and the 35 million people here, are the most impacted jurisdiction from transboundary pollution into sensitive environmental habitat, maritime habitat. So I just want to say for the record, we certainly support money coming in through this grant. I think that I don't see it so much as a climate adaptation issue as much as I see it as an environmental justice issue for the region, and not just for the South Bay, but the entire region. And just to correct a couple items that I heard from staff, the first thing I want to say is I want to remind everybody that this is the #1 polluted watershed in the United States, #1. And we're not just talking about viral load or bacterial load. We're talking about chemicals. We're talking about PCB, DDT, arsenic, lead, coming down the Tijuana River and impacting our marine environment. You can smell it every night. Truth was right. You smell it every night. And if you're smelling it, you're breathing it in, and that is having an unknown health consequence to the people of the South Bay and the millions of people that live in the region. Now, back in the day, the Port of San Diego and the city of Imperial Beach sued the federal government. Right now, every single day, the IBWC is in violation of the Clean Water Act, and they're in violation of the Resources Conservation Recovery Act. Every single day, they're in violation of their discharge permit. So where I want to correct our staff is that the original $300 million that was put in the USMCA because of the litigation is not enough to solve the problem. The supplemental $150 million that was agreed to happened because we were sitting in a meeting last year, and Mayor Duncan, you were at that meeting when we found out for the first time that the plant was not even up to code and not at any kind of capacity. It was less than 50% capacity of what it should be operating at. So those monies are largely going to go just to fix deferred maintenance that has been at that plant for a decade. And the additional money, the $310 million, that will get you some upgrade of the plant. However, without diverting the Tijuana River, where all those chemicals and those biologic agents are coming down, you are not going to solve the problem, because you're going to have water coming down the Tijuana River, hitting the ocean, bypassing the plant. That is not even an environmental review, and there's no money for that right now. So while I applaud the money, we should be focused as a region to say that we have already worked for years and years and years on a preferred alternative, and all the regional stakeholders have agreed to that alternative. That is upgrading the plant by 60 million gallons and diverting the Tijuana River to treat those pollutants before they hit the ocean. So what I'm asking is that we focus our efforts towards what we have already agreed to regionally, which is a preferred alternative. And now I'm not sure if this board has yet declared a state of emergency. Chair, I know that the county has. I know that the city of Chula Vista did just last week. Imperial Beach has. The port's been doing it for years. I would ask that this board officially recognize, if it hasn't already, that this is a state of emergency for the region, and communicate that to the governor and to the federal government, and that we direct our resources towards getting the preferred alternative implemented. Thank you.
Councilmember Fisher.
Thanks, Chair. I think this board is very aware that this is a very sensitive and personal subject. To me, the Tijuana River Valley has continued to be polluted. I expressed to staff my concern is that the timeline in creating a plan is into 2027, late 2027. I can't wait 3 more years to have a plan that's unfunded, then trying to figure this out. This is so far beyond what my request was earlier this year. The whole idea behind having a task force was to hit it immediately and use whatever means necessary. I look 3 years into the future. Actually, I looked 3 years into the past. In 2020, the beach attendance in Imperial Beach was 2.8 million people during COVID. We understand people wanted to get out and about. As of last year, 698,000 people. Our businesses are struggling. The health impacts are known. I don't know what other data we can compile that is going to prove anything different than what we already know. We have the top scientists in the country down there doing this consistently, and we appreciate the county's participation, the state, the schools, everybody who's pitched in. You mentioned, looking at idling, sediment, trash. I've not had one resident complain about that. Does it add to it? I agree, and I know that our purview needs to be bigger than just the trash or just the sewage. I understand that. But the ask really looks at what are we going to do to push now? It was mentioned that the USMCA is up for review in 2026. I think this is a great opportunity for us to use our legislative legs to get up there and to lobby for this, to get some legislation put in. We as an agency are going to be operating this toll crossing that's coming. It's been mentioned before, the increase in commerce is in the millions and in the billions, which means that Tijuana will continue to grow. They'll be providing jobs both north and south of the border. There will be more manufacturing done in Tijuana. Well, I don't know how many more PCBs, TBTs, toxins that this river can hold without making the entire region sick. I would ask that we continue to look at this work group as an overall general upgrade from what we've been doing and the work in the past, but ask that we put this money, put our time and effort to looking how to solve the immediate problem in the now and not wait for 3 years to have a plan. I don't know what's going to happen in 3 years. To my colleagues, Councilmember Moreno, Councilmember Chavez, Chair Vargas, we live in the communities down there. 3 years ago, we didn't ever hear people north of the 905 complaining about the smell. Never in Chula Vista did it happen. The last 3 years have been the most unbelievably insane change. We have people moving. We have people getting sick. The data will show that. The health studies continue on. We're grateful for all those who have advocated for that, who spent the time to make sure that our residents are being heard. And again, I have empathy because what we're seeing on north of the border, I'm sure is happening south of the border. I don't know the details of how they collect it, if they do, if they don't. But I think that if we were to put our eggs in the right basket, if we were to, again, look at getting legislation up to the USMCA review, I think that both countries would agree that there needs some help at the border. And I think this is the right way to put it. You just can't continue to increase commerce. You can't have a good relationship with your neighbor if you're poisoning them. It's impossible to have happen. This needs to end. And again, I'm okay with what's before us today, but I think the focus really does need to be on the boundary border pollution. Without a shadow of a doubt, again, I know process is process and there's things we have to do, but I think it's part of this agency and this board's legacy to do the right thing at this point in time. And I would ask that much more effort, much more effectiveness, much more funding goes into doing what we can in the now. And I hope that, my colleagues here would agree with me. And I know this is serious. It does affect, and like I mentioned, 3 years ago, we never heard anything in Chula Vista, never heard anything in Coronado, as Mayor-elect Duncan can attest to. What's to say this isn't going to hit Point Loma? What's to say it's not going to continue on and on and on? As commerce grows, it just continues to move and manufacturing will be unvetted. And I hope that, our new administration, I think the current administration probably would have done something as well when they looked at the review, and our current presidential administration and the future one, I think we'll have an idea of what's going on. And I think that the USMCA is the perfect tool for us to renegotiate with our partners to the south and come to agreement to make sure that there's some action taken, make sure that the regulations are enforced and that those who are illegally dumping and flushing into our country are held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a couple of other members on the queue, but I want to make sure, sir, I'm going to ask you to please keep your comments until public comment. Yeah, please. All right. So I'm happy to make a motion so we can accept this. And I understand the council members' concern about only the treatment plan, but I do think it's extremely important to look at the region as a whole. Smuggler's Gulch and the trash and the sediment really have an impact on the way our communities are being impacted. So, back when I declared the first public health care crisis in 2021 and then later an emergency, it was really looking at it from that perspective of the bigger picture lens, because we know where the root of the problem is, right? It's on the infrastructure issues from the Mexican side. And to Councilmember Chavez's point, there's been a lot of movement from the Mexican side, but in this particular transition that we're in at the federal government, it's going to take all of us. And some of us have to work very closely with the new administration to ensure that I think the current IBWC commissioner or someone like her needs to be in that role, because how is it possible that no one noticed or no one talked about the operations piece until she got there? And so I think it's we all talked about it, but from the internal side of the EPA side, it was really important that we have somebody like Marilena Giner, who actually has the engineer background and who's talking about the impacts and what is actually occurring. And so there's been a lot of movement. And I believe that this is the right time to be able to support this funding so that we can keep looking at it from a regional perspective. It still continues to be a priority for me and for our county. We're continuing to move forward. APCD has made some really clear changes. Some of my colleagues are on that board as well. But I do believe that this accepting of this grant today, I think is going to help us look at this issue as a regional issue and not a South Bay issue, because it's not a South Bay issue. It's a regional issue that's been impacting our communities for over 90 years, just to be clear. So with that, like I said, I'm happy to make a motion. Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. I want to go over a few things. Can we go to page 6 that was up a little while ago, please? Or slide 6. Thank you. First, preliminarily, I just want to have a few comments in regard to some of the things that were said. The original $310 million in the USMCA from 2020, that has only recently arrived to the IBWC in the amount of $290 million after the EPA did their 3-year study. So that money is there now. It's not even half to used to expand the plant, let alone, as Commissioner Malcolm was saying, to deal with the repairs to the current plant, which in April 2023 was the first time that was disclosed. It was really not operational. The gate was stuck open and it had been overwhelmed with sediment. It was completely broken down at that time, actually. I agree with the chair that Commissioner Hanier of the US IBWC is doing a great job now, but at the time that was disclosed, there was literally no communication or disclosure with the public. When she was questioned about it, her response was she works for the State Department in this entity, and her job's not to lobby and obtain funds and things. There's been a dramatic change. I get along with her very well. I serve on the US IBWC Citizens Advisory Group, on their Tijuana River Division working group, on the Senator LaFonsa Butler's regional working group on this, which now is being taken over by Congressmember Peters and Vargas. The reason I mention that is not some kind of self-aggrandizing thing about me, but when you look at these anticipated outcomes, all of these are known. This is already all happening. I mean, I guess getting someone from the Borders Committee, up to speed on all this, or maybe they already are. I'm not really sure what really the point of that is. I mean, SANDAG's power lies in one specific area: spending money. And SANDAG can use that power whenever we have an opportunity to spend money at a border area and use that money as an influencer on change at the border. As Councilmember Fisher was saying, every time we do something to expand commerce at the border, which I do like to expand commerce at the border with our largest trading partner, Mexico, it increases the amount of sewage that flows into the United States and poisons our community. That's a fact. Every time we do it, there is more residences built, more workers built, less hooked up to the sewage built. There is a Mexico IBWC already that exists and works with the US IBWC. They already exist. I mean, I'm fine for accepting the grant. More money for something is fine. What I'm not fine with is SANDAG having any effort or influence with their spending, as well as when we work with Mexico on projects, not have it taken into account that there should be some mitigation or some effect by that spending on that specific project, not a plan for some, mitigation in the Tijuana River Valley 5 years from now. There should be a direct relation and correlation as we increase the pollution and increase the commerce, that some effect directly from that comes back to solve the problem immediately. As to a couple other comments that were made about money, I'll just 3 specific ones. So when the staff says, hey, if we get 200 million more, we're done because we had the 300 and now the 150. It's important to know these things are very different. The 310 was for the expansion of the plant, right? The 150 was a US IBWC construction budget funding last year. Okay, that's pretty much going to rehabbing the old plant, some towards the plans for the new construction. Those are very separate. Since that 2020 310 million, again, as I said, that has arrived now at around 290, there has been no supplemental directly or additional funding really for the expansion of the plant. Now, we need to understand that just because, and I'm not talking down to anybody, but it sounds like people think things have happened that haven't. President Biden's current $310 million supplemental request might be granted with $1, might be granted with no dollars. It's a supplemental request. I can tell you my understanding, talking with members of Congress the last few days on it, is one of 2 things hopefully will happen. If a budget passes, which looks unlikely, maybe it'll be included because it's in the FEMA bill to replenish FEMA. I think it's a $100 billion bill to replenish FEMA and the SBA disaster funds, which are empty, and our small 310 million, treating it almost like a disaster from the federal government for the first time, is in there. But in the likelihood that a budget doesn't pass for the federal government for 2025, it's going to be pushed out to potentially as late as March for the deadline for that budget, that in order to get that continuing resolution to maintain current funding, they will pass a FEMA bill separately, which will potentially include this. And that's part of a bargaining between the Congress members of both parties. So I hope it happens. But to be clear, we have no new current funding coming right now whatsoever, guaranteed. As to the public commenter that talked about the EPA's involvement, and as if that's a done deal, and we have some new EPA, I mean, they're involved, but to have the new EPA bill that's been proposed, that bill's never come to a vote. That was proposed by Congressmember, I think by Senator Padilla as well, but also by Congressmember Vargas and Peters. And I was at that announcement, as was the chair, and that bills went to Congress, but it's never been put forth or voted on. That bill would give the EPA a $10 million or a whatever, multi-million-dollar budget per year for 10 years as the coordinating agency over all of this, which would be great. But that is not done, right? So we need to understand somebody proposes something doesn't mean anything's happening. So to me, when I look at this is fine, but this does not replace, as Councilmember Fisher said, the need for what I thought we were going to do, which was an environmental working group that would help look at every project that we're doing, because we're rolling through projects, right? We have next on the agenda. We're rolling through stuff constantly. We had Mexico here a year ago saying they're interested in a transborder trolley, right? So are we going to review a project like that and potentially do it with no look at the effects on the increasing sewage in our communities? It's great to talk about how important and damaging and how much we take it all so seriously, but what are we doing? Like, what are we actually going to do? So to me, I don't think this satisfies that urgent need that was brought up back in the past by Imperial Beach and was part of the language we included. This is fine, I'll vote for it, but I think we still need to have something done at this board level to focus on having an actual impact financially, like now. Like every time we spend money and increase the sewage, every time there's more commerce, there's more sewage that comes into the United States, closes Imperial Beach, and causes all of these issues, as well as other coastal communities like Coronado. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And my understanding is the intent, right? Because honestly, I didn't want another committee to be created just to be created, because we have plenty of committees. I mean, the County of San Diego has an actual list already that prioritizes strategies, so you're not going to be starting from scratch. The City of Imperial Beach also has another different committee. The community has a committee. There's a lot of committees already taking place. For me, the only reason why this particular body is important, not only because we're accepting a grant for it, but when they went out for the grant, is because the weight of having 18 cities in the region supporting, right, and a bipartisan effort makes a huge difference at the national level and with the governor as well. So that was the intent behind this after discussion with the committee. But, to your point, I think there's more doing that needs to be done versus just, let's have another plan, let's figure out what to do, because we know what needs to be done. The infrastructure on the Mexican side has to be fixed in order for our communities to be able to, breathe clean air and be able to swim in the beaches. It's pretty simple, not as fast, but pretty simple. So thank you, Council Member. Next on the agenda, I have Council Member from National City.
Thank you very much, Chair Vargas. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation and the information. Chair Vargas, I want to commend you for bringing this forward to SANDAG. I know that there has been several comments throughout the months that I have been at SANDAG about the need to address the border issue that's happening. I do want to thank Commissioner Malcolm for his comments about the effect that the pollution is having on the residents of the South Bay. That is clear. There is no denying that. And also, Council Member Fisher, in National City this past summer, on the hottest days, we could smell the air, the bad air. And of course, it was emanating from the South and from this treatment plant that is causing all of these problems. But I do want to highlight the fact that this is before us here at SANDAG because it is a regional problem, and it is time that SANDAG had a say in this or had an action put towards this particular issue. And certainly, Mayor-elect Duncan, thank you for the very granular details that you just mentioned. Yes, it is necessary. And I think hopefully staff, I see them taking lots of notes. I think that's the type of input that will guide this that we're putting forward. So it is important to focus on the first step, perhaps, but then also how the impact or what we are anticipating for an impact beyond what is on the slide right now. Thank you.
Okay, and then I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Shu, but I want to make sure that I respond to Commissioner. You had a question about us creating an emergency. So I want to make sure that you know that when I was chair in September of 2022, September 22nd of 2023, we adopted as a SANDAG board a resolution in support of local emergency for U.S.-Mexico transporter pollution, environmental crisis, and requests for federal and state action. So we've done that as a board.
Thank you very much. I wasn't sure, yeah. But thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Because
I'm
part
really
of the
glad
power
for
of
staff that
SANDAG
remember
is our
everything.
regional voice
Yes.
as well.
Yes. Councilmember Shu.
Thank you. I want to keep this moving along and not repeat all the great comments that have already made by my fellow board members. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, so we could keep moving. One is don't forget to include the local agencies that have been dealing with this, which is the Air Pollution Control District, water boards, and others. So I think you probably have that, but didn't want to include that. But they've been pretty effective working with the community and trying to get community contacts. And I think it's important that we don't need to start anew. There's already been a lot of work done on that. Going forward, scoping for this plan, I hope we do both long-term and short-term. So short-term, maybe and I'm going to concentrate my comments with regards to the pollution from the transportation sector, since we know how to stop sewage. You just stop, you treat it and you stop it. But in terms of transportation, I have some real concerns. One is, can we at least look into and not implement things like increasing the load limits on trucks, and we're working with Caltrans, at least in the border region, so that we may be able to limit the number of trucks going through. Can we use some other ideas with regards to aligned with our managed lane system going forward? So if we can't do it at the border, near the border, we could develop a managed lane system to, again, reduce overall traffic, or at least change it in terms of congestion relief type of a system. Those things that we can do today, and it doesn't cost a lot of money, and it may reduce pollution tremendously in terms of from the transportation sector. And I have this other big question I've been asking, and I hope we do study it. Does increasing the number of lanes to cross the border work in the same way induced demand works for freeway lanes? And if that is so, we're really going the wrong direction as we increase the number of border crossing lanes. And essentially, we're just creating a problem that's going to not go away. It's going to create a bigger problem going forward. On a long-term basis, we should be looking at freight transportation by train to reduce, and that would, of course, be with electrified trains like we have in other parts of the country. Cross-border trolley, which will also reduce the number of cars going through. These things will actually increase security along the border, as well as reduce the amount of pollution. And lastly, I think much of the problem that this has created over the decades is that we have lack of vision for this river and this entire area. For some reason, because it's next to the Mexican border, we, meaning our region and maybe the nation, has disregarded the needs of this whole valley and the river. So I hope we start out with a vision that sees that this valley will be treated no differently than any other valley along the California coast or the entire western coast, and that we have that vision going forward. That's what we're going to aim for. We want this border crossing to be not only it's the busiest in our nation, but as good as any other border crossing, or the best border crossing in terms of effectiveness, ease of getting goods and people across, as well as reducing pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Shu, I'm happy to share with you the concept of the Gateway to the Californians, which is developing the whole region and working closely with the community on this, so that we can think about the region. Because I think people forget that They are real people who live in the Tijuana River Valley with own horses, kids play baseball. These are, people go to school there. And so there's a lot, to me, it's just disheartening that for so many years, this continues to be an issue that I don't think would happen north of the 8, to be honest. And so I think we have the synergy now with the representatives that we have right now, and we all know that this is a priority and we're all pushing hard. But really rethinking about what it looks like, I think is also parallel work that we have to do. I've been criticized for it, but I do think that we can't have a vision of just one thing. You have to have a vision of overall, what do we want for the future of our communities to look like? So we're going to keep pushing. Council member.
Me, Moreno, thank you. And I was in and out, I think, of the queue. And I want to thank you for this report. As the council member that represents the border and a large part of the San Isidro, of the Tijuana River Valley, I very much look forward to this, to the progress in this, and I'm extremely grateful to our CEO, Mario Orso, for staying on top of this. I lived, 1 mile away from the plant, the IBWC water plant. I get to smell a lot of what was mentioned today. And I too am frustrated. I'm frustrated that SANDAG has to deal with this federal issue. I'm frustrated that the federal government has left behind the IBWC plant for so many years, to the point where SANDAG now has to even formulate this, this entity. And so, although I share in that frustration, I think this is a step in the right direction, where we could cohesively have a voice here at SANDAG. I think that it is a step forward in addressing the environmental and public health challenges that have plagued our Baja California border region for too long, that most recently did become extremely acute, I would say the past 2 years, because of the plant being down in Tijuana, really exacerbated the smell and the condition of our beaches. I do strongly support this initiative, and I do want to commend SANDAG staff and Caltrans for doing this. And I think it is appropriate to have this discussion at the Borders Committee, as that is our regional agency, right, that oversees the border. I think it's appropriate. Am I frustrated? Are my residents frustrated? 1000%. Absolutely, we're frustrated. Would this be happening in other parts of the country or of the city region? I don't think so. But I think this is certainly a step in the right direction, and I will be supporting this before us. And thank you guys for all the work that you've done.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I just had a couple of comments. First of all, I do support what we're doing today, but I also agree that we need to really focus on a few things, and that's attracting more money. Obviously, we need to attract more money as a region, because the fact that the beaches are closed at the rate that they've been closed, and people have to breathe air that is, the way that it is, it's ridiculous. Back, I think it was in June, Mayor-elect Duncan and I showed up for a press conference down with Mayor Gary, talking about we need a state of emergency, just a state of emergency after all this time. As a San Diego native, I'm appalled. I mean, I've enjoyed beaches all along our coastline over the years, and the fact that we have beaches that are closed and people can't even go to the beaches. But back to the point that you made, Chair Vargas, our kids can't in South County. And when I say ours, They are ours because it's the entire county. You know, our kids go and play down there too. I mean, when my daughter was playing soccer, she played down in South County. We all need to figure out how we are going to attract more money, because the fact that the federal government is not putting the proper resources is, honestly, I'm going to use a word. No one else has said it, and it's probably not a good one, but it's criminal. I mean, it really is criminal that we have turned the blind eye to it time after time. And I don't mean us. I'm talking about our federal government. Now's the time to actually come together as a region and figure out, I know we did have that resolution, but what can we do more to say enough is enough? We need the money. We need to fix this. People are not, I mean, I think there are health effects. I personally have an issue with that. So anyway, how can we move forward to make a stronger voice to say we need that, we need more money. We need more money to go toward these vital improvements, because it's ridiculous and it's past time. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Krantz.
Yes. With my service on the council as mayor coming to an end, I spent some time in the last few weeks reflecting on all that I've been able to participate in and learn over the last 12 years. And certainly one of the things that I have appreciated the most is seeing the work that is being done by agencies such as the San Elijo Joint Powers Authority and the Encino Wastewater District Board for the treatment that they provide for our black water, and that their work has brought our region, our cities in the North County to the point where we're fairly close to having the capability of turning the proverbial toilet water to tap water. And so it is super frustrating for me to see the ongoing challenge that we're having with the Tijuana River, when we clearly have the capability and knowledge and wherewithal to address that issue. As the mayor of a coastal city with 5.6 miles of Pacific Ocean shoreline, I am definitely in lockstep with the mayors of the coastal communities that start at the border and head north, and recognize how urgent the need is to address this situation. We sometimes have to post warnings at our beaches because the urban ooze has bacteria levels that are unhealthy, but I know that the experiences that we're having in Encinitas are just a drop in the bucket compared to what those jurisdictions that are closest to the border are experiencing. I recently held a special meeting at the city of Encinitas to bring awareness to the passage of Proposition 4, which is a bond measure that was successfully passed here at the state level to float $10 billion with a B dollars worth of bonds to, and 3.8 billion of that is for grant making to address drought, flood, and water supply issues. So I would encourage this board to explore the possibility of taking advantage of some of those funds to address this issue just as quickly as possible.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, can you call the vote, please?
Carlsbad. Councilmember Burkholder.
Yes.
Chula Vista, Councilmember Chavez.
Chavez, yes.
Coronado Mayor-elect Duncan.
Duncan, yes.
County of San Diego Chairwoman Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
Del Mar is absent. El Cajon is absent. Encinitas Mayor Kranz.
Tony, yes.
Escondido Councilmember Garcia.
Garcia, yes.
Imperial Beach Councilmember Fisher.
Fisher, yes.
La Mesa Councilmember Shu.
Let me see, yes.
Lemon Grove Mayor Vasquez.
Lemon Grove, yes.
National City Councilmember Molina.
Yes.
Oceanside Councilmember Robinson.
Yes.
Poway is absent. City of San Diego Councilmember Moreno.
Moreno, yes.
San Marcos Mayor Jones.
Jones, yes.
Santee Mayor Minto. Santee is absent. Solana Beach, second Vice Chair Hebner.
Yes.
Vista, Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Melendez, yes.
The motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is State Route 11 Otay Mesa update. I'm going to turn it over. I think it's going to be Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to just take a few quick, make a few quick remarks as the team gets ready here. So the Otay Mesa East project is important to both of us and is being delivered in partnership between SANDAG and Caltrans. We know the freight that crosses the California-Mexico border accounts for nearly $32 billion of the U.S. GDP. And the federal government has not built the infrastructure needed to keep up with this cross-border trade. Otay Mesa East will be an economic engine for the nation, not just this region. In the 1980s, when the federal government opened Otay Mesa Port of Entry, it happened without the direct coordination of this region. We've all been catching up since then: MTS, SANDAG, Caltrans, City of San Diego, County of San Diego. We've built new roads, fixed old ones, added transit facilities, bus services, et cetera. And with Otay Mesa East, we've taken our fate into our own hands to build a new port of entry. So this partnership has dedicated more than $1.3 billion of transportation funding towards this effort. And with that, Caltrans and SANDAG and the SANDAG Otay Mesa team continues to work hard and is here to present on the remaining moving parts. So with that, thank you, Chair.
All right.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Maria Rodriguez Molina. I'm the director of the Mega Projects Border and Goods Movement Department. With me, I have Betsy Blake, our senior legal counsel, Peter Schellenberg, our financial advisor from PFM, and Hannah Stern, our senior government relations manager. We're here to give you a project update and discuss funding to construct the project, as well of the uses of the toll revenues. Betsy will cover some legal limitations on these uses, and Peter will go over some financial constraints. Let me start with a project update, and let's go back in time. This project was identified in the late 90s, and an MOU was signed with the Mexican government, agreeing to collaborate to pursue a new port of entry in the San Diego region. Later in 2006, SANDAG released a study on economic and border impacts that resulted in loss of billions of dollars. In 2008, GSA feasibility study recognized the need for OME, and even with the planned existing expansions at San Isidro and Otay, there was still that need for a third port of entry. However, that third port of entry in San Diego was not a priority given the many priorities they had in other states. So the concept of revenue neutral was created. A toll would be imposed and it would allow the project to pay for itself. The tolls would be used to pay back any debt resulting from the sale of bond and to pay the construction capital. And those tolls would also be used to cover operations and maintenance, both for the port of entry federal facility and for the state facilities. That same year, in 2008, legislation passed identifying SANDAG as the toll authority, and a presidential permit was secured for Otay Mesa East. 2011, SANDAG signed an MOU with the U.S. federal government together with our partner agency Caltrans to agree to collaborate on this project. 2012, we completed the environmental document, and in 2018, a new presidential permit was submitted to continue working on this project. This project has a very unique tolling structure. SANDAG is the toll authority and will collect tolls northbound and southbound. In order to provide an efficient and reliable border crossing experience with an average wait time of 20 to 30 minutes, we will use dynamic tolling. In 2022, an agreement with the Mexico federal government was signed, agreeing to share revenue equally between the US and the Mexico government. And that bank was identified to be as a custodian of the funds. The overall project cost is $1.3 billion, and the majority of the funding is coming from Federal Highway Administration federal funds and state funds. The local funds you see there were used to match grants and to leverage more funding. The financial structure includes non-recourse toll revenue bonds. This means that only the toll revenues will be utilized to repay the debt. Now let's dive into more detail on the funding. On the left side, you see what we have spent so far to acquire the right-of-way, to construct the 2 miles of SR 11 that will lead to the new port of entry, and we built all of the connections to SR 905 and SR 125. The funding you see on the right side is for the facilities that remain to be built, which include the federal port of entry, the intelligent transportation system and tolling, and the state facility that will also host FMCSA that will inspect trucks after they come out of the port of entry. You can see that most of the funding comes from the grants, $192 million from a state grant, $150 million on a federal infra grant, $71 million of federal funds that come through the state. The bonds are required to fully fund the projects, and they're estimated at $271 million. $15 million of Transnet border are also allocated to this project. In order to sell the bonds and finalize the financial strategy, we need to secure all agreements with Mexico and with the US federal government. More than 2 years ago, we started negotiating with Customs and Border Protection and General Service Administration, the two agencies involved in port of entries. General Service Administration, GSA, owns the facilities. Customs and Border Protection, they process people, vehicles, and cargo coming through. The federal agency started from a cost-neutral project and requested that all construction costs and the next 40 years of operations and maintenance were to be covered by the project sponsors. During these complex and lengthy negotiations, SANDAG and Caltrans worked on decreasing our risk exposure. CBP agreed to take on the cost of staffing, which amounts to about $100 million per year. They will go through the appropriations federal process to obtain the staffing. Both GSA and CBP agreed to cover any operations and maintenance costs that the sponsors are unable to pay in a specific year when revenues are less than what we anticipated. However, the sponsors will have to pay back that cost to the federal government in future years. These were significant concessions from the federal government that allow us to share risk. We're very close to finalize this agreement, which is critical to meet funding timelines. Now, Betsy will continue and go over some legal considerations regarding the tolls.
Good morning. So the law places certain restrictions on how the toll revenues can be used. One of the first considerations is the Otay Mesa East Toll Facility Act itself, which was passed in 2008. And that act limits how toll revenues can be used to things like paying for the bonds, paying our tolling O&M, sharing that toll revenue with Mexico pursuant to the toll revenue sharing agreement, paying certain federal costs for General Services Administration and Customs and Border Protection, and then obviously building the capital facility. So that's a state law context of how we can use toll revenues. One of the other considerations is also the California Constitution. It's in the mix when we consider how toll revenues can be used. And generally, the Constitution provides that in order for certain governmental fees to not be considered a tax, and as you all know, taxes need to be passed by a certain voting threshold by the public or within the General Assembly by certain thresholds. In order not to be a tax subject to those thresholds, the amount needs to be reasonable to cover the governmental activity at issue, and there needs to be a nexus between the actual fee and the activity. There needs to be that connection. So for example, in a toll facility, what you'll typically see is that the toll that's collected goes right back into maintaining that toll facility. Now, one thing I want to be clear on this point, we're raising this issue to put it on the board's radar. There is a California appeals court decision that determined that tolls are not subject to this requirement. They're not taxes, but the California Supreme Court has not spoken on the issue, and this is an area that could be ripe for challenge. The other legal context to consider are the U.S. federal limitations. As many of you may remember, U.S. federal law limits how tolls collected from federally funded highways like State Route 11, how those can be used. Now, you might remember that SANDAG and Caltrans recently entered into a memorandum of understanding with Federal Highways Administration that confirms that tolls collected from the Mexico side equipment are not subject to those limitations. However, any tolls collected from the U.S. side can only be used for very narrow purposes related directly to the toll facility. So those are some of the legal context to consider. I'm going to turn it over to Peter Schellenberger to discuss some of the finances.
Okay. Thank you, Betsy. I'm going to ask for a quick tutorial on just the button forward gets me. Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm going to walk us through just how the toll revenues are applied and how they're shared between parties and the different purposes that the toll revenues are used to fund the various costs over time. Based upon a traffic and revenue forecast prepared by CDM Smith over a 40-year period through 2066, total revenues were forecasted to be $8.2 billion. The first thing that toll revenues are used to pay are tolling O&M costs. That's a shared cost between the U.S. and Mexico as currently contemplated. That's about $800 million over the life of the forecast. That leaves us with $7.4 billion of net toll revenues. Those net toll revenues are what is split 50-50. So $3.7 billion flows to SANDAG, $3.7 billion flows to Mexico under the current toll revenue allocation agreement. That top line is the flow of funds which we have contemplated and is required to satisfy investors and rating agencies. And so as SANDAG receives its 50%, $3.7 billion, the first thing that needs to be done is to pay bondholders, to pay principal and interest on debt on a monthly basis. We then need to fund up reserves, funding up O&M reserves, debt service reserves. As we do that, we are then left with remaining revenues. There is a concept where Mexico has allowed SANDAG to retain at the beginning of each month 60% of revenues just to increase the pledge to bondholders and strengthen the credit. With that in mind, we do need to make Mexico whole at the end of each year. And so there is a 10% remittance or a 10% flow back to Mexico to make them whole to that 50%. So there's the idea that at the end of each and every year, whatever comes in that year is shared equally across the two countries. SANDAG's flow of funds, again, is first to guarantee the repayment of debt, fund up reserves, and then we're left with residual revenues. And the amount of residual revenues over that 40-year period is $2.4 billion. So I now want to sort of focus on where the residual revenues goes and how that flows over time. There are three primary costs and purposes for the toll revenues. First is to deliver the project and fund the capital costs. Second is ongoing O&M costs, repair and replacement. And the third is to eventually replace this facility and have a new port of entry, a modernized port of entry in the 2064, 2066 time period, 40 years out. A fairly complicated flow chart, and so I just want to focus your eye on a couple aspects of it. This describes on how that 2.4 billion flows over time and what buckets this is used to fill up. And so the first takeaway is we need to hold on to some cash. We need some liquidity within the project itself. So we need to fund up what we're calling a project liquidity fund. That's first and foremost. That will hit a defined limit of $60 million. Now, the federal partners also want to participate in revenues as they begin to flow when the facility is open. So we can't just first fund up the liquidity fund. We will fund up the liquidity fund while sharing revenues equally with our federal partners, as well as retaining dollars here at SANDAG. So there's an equal split until 2041. At 2041, we fund up the $60 million target for the liquidity fund. We hold that $60 million as needed. But once we hit that $60 million target in 2041, we then start funding up the federal partners according to defined limits. So let's talk about that for a minute. SANDAG staff has worked over the last 2 years with CBP and GSA staff to understand what their costs for ongoing maintenance, renewal and replacement for the facility, for our technology, et cetera, are over time. And through that process of understanding their costs, the available revenues, there have been defined caps to what the federal partners can expect to receive over time. And those defined caps, I'll just read them. Over time, it's been agreed that CBP would be participating to a limit of $564 million, GSA $497 million, and SANDAG $439 million. That's how the buckets and the revenues would be split. Just to give you a sense, and we'll look at the cash flows in a minute and how these dollars flow in, it takes time for these toll revenues to accumulate. And so, for instance, to hit the CBP cap of $560 million, that takes till 2062. So there's an even split. Dollars are paying debt service. They're being split across partners. The liquidity fund is funded. Dollars then flow on an equal basis. And it's not until 2062 till CBP hits that cap, according to our revenue forecast. It's not until 2060 that GSA hits the cap. SANDAG hits that cap of $439 million in 2059. So those are a couple of takeaways. One, these costs have been defined. There's been a not to exceed limit that's been baked into sort of ongoing agreements with CBP and GSA, and it takes time to hit those limits. So each dollar, if you will, is flowing and has been fully subscribed until quite a ways downstream until 2062. In that time frame, 2060, 2064, we then start accumulating dollars to modernize this port facility. Again, back to this concept of net neutrality. There is it contemplates the life cycle of this project. And so you want to be left, you want to maintain a strong state-of-the-art port of entry as this facility degrades and requires upgrading. And so there's dollars set aside for that, the GSA Modernization Reserve. That begins to get funded not really until that 2060 timeframe. And thereafter, there are some remaining dollars really towards the back end of the cash flow, 2064, 2066, which leaves about $280 million unspoken for, if you will, that CBP, GSA, and SANDAG would utilize. That's yet undefined. Just to give you a sense of cash flow. So those are the buckets that define limits, how the dollars are prioritized and what they're used to fund. A couple of takeaways before we jump into the cash flow. One, even though there's different parties sort of managing and applying the dollars, each of these dollars, every toll dollar stays within the corridor. So although it goes to GSA, it is for the benefit of the facility. Although it may be managed through CBP, it is for the benefit of this project and the facility. So that's one important takeaway. Each of these dollars on the SANDAG side stays within this facility, within the corridor. Here's the cash flow. This shows SANDAG's portion, if you will, the 50% which is the 3.7 billion over time. It starts off fairly humbly, you know, in 2028, total net revenues to be shared between the US and Mexico is 13 million. SANDAG's share in 2028 is half of that, 6.5 million. You look out to 2035, we get up to about 40 million. 2040, you get up to about 60 million. That's SANDAG's 50%. And again, that's the allocation of those dollars. The gold area is debt service, debt repayment. So that does absorb a fair amount of capacity. And then you start filling up the additional buckets, the liquidity reserve, the CBP dollars, the GSA share. And so I will pause there and turn it over to Maria.
Thank you. This is our current schedule. The goal is to finalize the federal agreement next month, so we can stay within the funding timelines. Caltrans will begin an early work package early next year. This work is to bring more material to the site to match the elevation of the fully constructed port of entry on the Mexican side. Caltrans will finish the drainage facilities, and they'll work on striping and signage on the SR11, the portion of SR11 that it's not open to the traffic yet. Caltrans has been connecting and coordinating closely with the developers in the area. They've made significant progress, so we want to match that progress and look to open SR11 for local traffic in the near future. In February, we anticipate having the contractor on board on the CMGC project. This contractor would come on board and help us finalize the design. In March, we expect to sign the additional agreements with Mexico. These agreements were completed in November. However, a new administration came in, so we are reviewing them with the new administration, and we anticipate to be able to sign them soon. The most important date on this slide is the September 2025. We have to allocate the grant, the infra grant, 150 million by that date. Any delays in financial strategy, any changes in the agreements.
You mind moving the microphone just a little bit closer?
Oh,
I'm just having
sorry.
a little bit of trouble hearing. Thank you.
I apologize for that. So the most important date is the September 2025. We have to allocate by that date, or we are at risk of losing $150 million. So any changes to the financial strategy or the agreements might put that in danger and really would delay the project years until we find new sources of funding. We anticipate, if we meet that date, we anticipate to begin construction in November 2025, and that's contingent on getting the agreement to proceed to construction by CBP and GSA. That concludes the presentation, but I really want to make a statement. We are committed to reduce environmental impacts at the border. In fact, we have already mitigated for this project, given the direction on the CEQA and NEPA documents requirements. So we have acquired 181 acres of a mitigation Lone Star mitigation site. This project, these facilities will be LEED certified. We will have electric vehicle charging stations, and this will help us reduce pollution at the border. We also commit in working together with the climate adaptation and environmental justice plan team that we heard from right before our presentation. And we leverage our experience in working with the federal and local and state Mexican agencies and really bring us together on these border issues that relate to the environment. So that's our commitment. And we're here to answer any questions or hear any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Thank you, Chairwoman. On item 11, Truth, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Cesar Harvey and Mark after that.
All right, why is there zero mention of Jack's request of seeing the cost to SANDAG for a measly 1% mitigation fund? I demand the mitigation fund for wastewater infrastructure and Tijuana River diversion programs, a guaranteed protection of the estuary parks and canyons, and a development impact fund to offset 10 lanes of highway expansion where only compliant cars can cross. Time for San Diego, Chula Vista, and the county to put your money where your emergency declarations were at. Would Mexico say no to 10% or 20%? Who decided 50%? And what's the justification when Mexico hasn't made equal investment and they're flowing us biotoxins in return? There's still 3 agreements left for environmentalist Claudia to put up or shut up. Mexico's cut will be spent with no limitations. I demand a commitment to wastewater infrastructure. SANDAG expects over $439 million in straight profit from free trade fascism at IB's expense. As former Mayor Brian Bilbray said, what's even more disgusting than the sewage? Talk. Do you want to be remembered for fixing a major issue or for contributing to it? Simple question.
Your time expired. Our next commenter, Cesar Javier, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Mark.
My salute to our commander, Ma'am Vargas. You are the leadership in the unity of command. Thank you for that. I see you always in all meetings. State Road 11 or any road is here. It's here. The solution is here, including the route to the moon, Mars, and in the galaxy. Environment Quality Act, federal, state, mandates that we have to respect humans. And the thing, let us disband Air Pollution Control District because the mission is not accomplished since 1993. The issue, Tijuana River, they didn't use their nose. They didn't use the sophisticated tools. You ask the governing body. They only act in July 2024. Wow, how is that? How is that, General?
Your time has expired. Our next commenter, Mark, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Paul the Bold and then Alan C.
Mark, SANDAG's portion of the toll is expected to be $3.7 billion over the next 40 years. And the $439 billion that Truth was referring to, this is how they'll fund their UN treason, or part of it, I'm sure. The border should be controlled by the federal government. I don't know, well, here's a quote in your document. The project's first presidential permit was issued to GSA 10-year duration, and enabling legislation was passed to provide SANDAG authority to work with Mexico to build the Otay Mesa East port of entry. Well, SANDAG shouldn't exist and didn't before 40 years ago, and why they should have that amount of authority is partially because of Newsom, who's a young global leader for the World Economic Forum. That's treason. It's a foreign organization. And to have their representatives here in our government is against our sovereignty. Rosa Corey talks about that in her video on YouTube. Rosa Corey Part 1 will bring it up. It's the longer title. Corey is K-O-I-R-E. And the woman already referenced your California constitutional limitation.
Expired.
This is a scam.
Your time has expired. I'll move on to Paul the Bold. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Tessa. It would be nice if you'd let Mark finish up his last word or two. Mexico has basically finished its side. Probably SANDAG should butt out. But you should have planned the schedule and financing long ago. So, and I wonder how many illegals are actually taking advantage of an unplanned and unfinished site to breach the border. Finances. The Fed lowered the GDP growth forecast to 2% this year. It's probably a bit more. Kudos to all those scummy contractors and developers who used escalation techniques and manipulation to lock in the future inflation adjustments of up to 6%, called contingency fees. So please look at all your contracts and estimates for Transnet projects. And
your time expired. Our next commenter, Alan C., will be followed by the final two, phone number 672 and Blair Beekman. Alan, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Microphone check?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, what you don't talk about is Road Ad Bank, federal custodian funds both countries, Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. They're the board members. On the Mexico side, I can't pronounce their names. You got Rodrigo Ramirez and Mr. Ibarra. So you got delegates both sides controlling all the funds of this total collection. So yes, sewage across our border is a Mexico problem. You can put trillions of dollars in sewage plant on our side. It doesn't do crap when there's stinky, the smell from the river going from the Mexico dumping raw sewage to our plant. It doesn't do crap to help the people in Imperial Beach. Every day our beaches are shut down. Push these board members on NADBank, simply close the border of commerce, not a people of commerce. Watch how fast Mexico will resolve and shut off the taps of the raw sewage, including Punta Banderas, 60 miles south. I'll yield back.
Our next commenter, phone number 672, please go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, well, this is from the past. Amen to Mayor Rebecca, but it's the local government that has dropped the ball for decades now, and we want to bring in and blame the feds for their lack of support, but it's been our local government that has been to blame, actually, and Nora has said it herself. She says she's been criticized for what's not been taken care of regarding the OVR, the Otay River Valley, whatever. Then says we're going to keep pushing it where? Pushing it for how long more? And Vivian, you take issue with this going on because of the demographic, then please do also take issue up with the chair who has stated at these meetings that she could have done something more about this while serving on other boards in her past career. Career politicians taking advantage of their positions kind of makes me wonder if they purposely fail providing solutions only to be able to keep saying, we're going to keep pushing.
Your time expired. Our final commenter, Blair Beekman, please go ahead.
Thank you. Blair Beekman. My Zoom was acting a little funny. Thank you that you saw my hand raised. For myself, the World Design Capital meeting just took place between Tijuana and San Diego. I hope a lot got accomplished there. I know, we're all thinking about the Tijuana River Valley issues. How on board is Mexico and Tijuana with the plans, and with ideas like the pure water system, developing that for the future of the area? How can that conversation become a bit more open and regular? Should it be? I'm just asking. It seems like it should. Good luck how to do that, and really working together. We have to take the next step so everyone's on board with this plan. And then we present this new plan to the new administration and talk about love and beauty and the best of ourselves. Good luck how we can do that. And also comment about toll issues. Mexico, their federal government wants to do a really good job with tech accountability practices and privacy practices for the public. Good luck how we can work together with Mexico on toll tech issues. And that becomes an open, accountable, good process. Thank you.
And that concludes the public comments.
So is there a motion to approve this item? Oh. Is there any comments, sir? Councilmember Schultz. Sure. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I've spent a little bit of time with staff trying to go over this and understand a little bit better what we can do. The numbers that were presented on the financial part of it, there's some numbers there, but are those actual numbers or are they just representation of expected percentages?
Those are all forecasted numbers.
Okay.
All forecasted numbers, yep.
Except for the ones that hit the max, where it talks about that's where the max is.
Yep. The percentage split between the U.S. and Mexico, that's been defined. Whatever the dollar amount turned into, the percentage amounts have been defined. The buckets that would flow to GSA and CBP to offset a portion of their costs, that has been defined. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then, just a reminder, back in September, I brought to the board that Imperial Beach had passed a resolution with a big ask regarding this project and the toll revenues. I provided a copy of the resolution for the board members. One thing you'll know about IB is we shoot really big. we're a small city, but we have a lot of heart and we really work on making it going forward. And I also reminded staff that, our ask wasn't for the tolling side revenues of the U.S. I love staff and I love the presentation, but the portrait they just painted is that there's really not a whole lot of money left over. And I 100% agree with that because of all the requirements from CBP, GSA, and the ongoing operations and maintenance of the crossing. However, the ask is for the Mexico to come from the monies to come from the Mexico side that they don't have quite near the investment. They don't have much of the operation and maintenance. And so as I spoke about on the last agenda item, when we talk about the USMCA, I think this is kind of the direction and to look at. I understand the complexity of going back to Mexico and redoing the agreements that have already been done. But I think the truth is that's for perhaps us on the state level to look at it, or State Department level to say, hey, do you want 50%? Do you want nothing? Do you want something? I think it's a bargaining chip, and I hate to pull that type of thing, a strong stance, but I don't know what else we do. We have to compel Mexico to fix this longstanding problem that it's not just it's going to fix for the United States, it's going to fix it for their people. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of Punta Colane. It's about 71 miles south of Ensenada. They're proposing a port down there. It would make it the third largest port in the world. So when you talk about infrastructure, you talk about the amount of traffic, you talk about the reason why the Otay Mesa East 2 port is being built. These are all factors. And the truth will remain that every time somebody in Tijuana flushes their toilet, it goes to the beaches of Imperial Beach. It's just unbelievable. I'm continuing to talk about this because it is important. This is one of those things in my almost 50 years of living in Imperial Beach. This is the one time I can see there's an actual opportunity for us to compel Mexico to create the infrastructure that they need, that would help us, that would fix our beaches. And ultimately, the ask of the funding in relation to the Otay Mesa 2 East is to fix it for my kids, my grandkids, Councilmember Moreno's, and whoever else, their kids. I looked at when we come to the point where everything becomes kind of solvent and was 2066, I don't think I'm going to see 95 years of birthdays. And so this is the truth of it. The truth is that we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity as a board, as an agency to leave a legacy of solving a historic problem. The chair mentioned it's 90 years old. It is. Absolutely. It's been going on that long. Councilmember Moreno has mentioned, the last 2 years being the absolute worst. I don't even know how your constituents can live that close to the problem and not lose their minds and their health. They're losing their health without a question. They're losing their health. And so I will continue to ask that this agency really pushes to look at the revenues from Mexico, from this toll, that it comes to the border region to fix the problem. Because we know the problem isn't solely on our side with our failed infrastructure at the IBWC. It's because of non-existent and failed infrastructure on the Tijuana and the Mexico side. Yeah, we know we're a regional agency, but I don't want this agency to go down as ones who opened the gate for all this commerce, all the trucks, and they did nothing to help the people. The 14th Amendment, is to protect all of us equally. And when we talk about social equity and injustice, that we have to be protected equally under the laws that we live under and that perhaps we work on creating. So again, my ask will continue to be that we look at ways to take part of the toll revenues from the Mexico side to solve the issues down in the border region. Thank you.
Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions on the legal parameters section. Maybe Council Blake can help enlighten me on it. So when I look at these legal parameters, and honestly, my honest opinion is it kind of seems like this whole entire presentation was prepared as sort of a rebuttal to why we can't do it. Councilmember Fisher had suggested, even though this is an information item. But just my question specifically, For instance, let's go to the bottom one, the California constitutional limitation. Are all of the tolls being collected in Mexico?
The toll readers are in Mexico, but the collection takes place in the United States at our back office system. They're all electronic.
Okay, so how are we allowed to, under the California constitutional limitation, collect the tolls, it says in this report, collected from Mexico side equipment, that's what it says, will not be subject to such limitations under U.S. federal law, and such tolls may therefore be used to fund CPB and GSA operations. So how is that allowed if the California constitutional limitation that is here?
So there are kind of three buckets that we're looking at. One's the state law, the second is the state constitution, and the third one is U.S. federal law. And U.S. federal regulations in Title 23 limit how toll revenues collected from a federally funded highway can be used. So as we mentioned in July, when we presented the agreements for the board to approval, we had entered into an agreement with FHWA that permits the new tolling arrangement that's being proposed, where the readers are moved outside of the toll facility. We move to a completely electronic toll, and so the collection happens outside of the federally funded highway. FHWA agreed that this structure makes it so that tolls are not subject to that U.S. federal law that has certain restrictions. And I'm happy to talk more about
I
those,
understand
but
that. It actually says that here. That's not my question. My question is not about federal law. My question is specifically about California constitutional, the legal parameter you set forth here. How are we allowed to, how are we not violating California constitutional limitations by having tolls, if you're saying they're collected in California, applied to CPB and GSA operations? It seems like it would violate California constitutional limitations that's set forth here.
So the California Constitution, some of you might be familiar with this because there sometimes can be a debate. At what point does a fee become a tax? So cities will often argue about this, and I'm sure your legal counsels have talked to you about it. And there's a two-part test that you look at to ensure that the fee, which some could argue a toll is, could become a tax. And if a fee doesn't have a reasonable relationship to the governmental activity, and there's not a nexus between the governmental activity and the fee, then it becomes a tax. And then people will say you should have had a public vote, or it should have passed by a certain threshold within the General Assembly. And so that issue is flagged for that tax fee discussion, not for the location of the toll readers. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, it's helpful. I mean, it actually says that. I guess my point is, so this are the rules, right? My question is the legal analysis, right? Where is the legal analysis? Is this something that maybe the board would say, hey, if we want to use some of the tolls for something that we believe has a reasonable nexus, and, you know, can you analyze that and tell us whether, because somebody's clearly done that somewhere in regard to the CPB and GSA money, because we're having an agreement and that's what we're going to do with it. And California law still applies. I mean, if the money is collected in California, if it's not, if it's collected in Mexico, then this California constitutional limitations shouldn't apply at all. And for instance, it's something like Councilmember Fisher's request.
So Councilmember, how about if we ask independent counsel to provide you with some also independent analysis?
That's great, and I appreciate that. And we can move on from it, and I will maybe submit a request to him and for your approval or whoever's approval. But also, and the reason I asked that is because when we did do the other item earlier, part of staff's request was that we give them some parameters on how we want things to operate, and we had so much going on, we didn't really do that. I don't think we have to do it at the board, but we could maybe informally like have that come back or work on that. But if that's okay, then I can maybe frame up my questions, and obviously it would be for the whole board, but I would appreciate that opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Shu, and thank you.
Thank you. First, I understand Councilman Fisher's resolution that he passed out earlier, and I agree we need to look at different ways to deal with the sewage problem. I just have this feeling, though, that there are many issues that Mexico needs to improve on with their share of these revenues. And in some ways, it may be better to tie it to the transportation sector and the pollution that's caused by transportation, since this is a transportation type of fee or toll, similarly to how we would spend it on the United States side. Obviously, there's many other sources of funding that potentially can help with regards to the sewage problem. I hope we can pursue that or work with Mexico to pursue that. I have just kind of a general question, since it's been in the news, and maybe you could remind us. We've seen these timelines for this project for this a number of times, but it's constantly being delayed. Can you just give us a quick sketch of why is it delayed again, and why we're looking at 2028 now, when I remember coming to SANDAG many years ago, and this is going to be a project that was going to open soon, it's going to be coming up real soon, and it constantly getting pushed back. Can you give us one or two reasons why that has happened?
The reason is that slide that talks about the 2-year negotiation with GSA and CBP. Reality was we were told it would take 3 months to come up with a very simple agreement on collaborating and roles and responsibilities. And it has been a very 2.5-year long almost negotiation. They were very strong with the revenue neutral, all has to be included. And it took 2 years to get them to give us some concessions because we truly couldn't afford paying for staffing, and we couldn't guarantee on a yearly basis the operations and maintenance. And I don't know if, Peter, you can talk about how it is so important that they take some of the risk to be able to sell the bonds.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have answered why it's taken so long. Reason one, U.S. government. There may be additional reasons, but it's been a difficult set of negotiations. We do need the only source for repayment for bondholders or toll revenues. And in order to generate those toll revenues, you need to have that facility open and operated. And so we needed an agreement from federal partners, CBP in particular, that they will, regardless of how revenues are realized, because there could be a pandemic and a drop, they need to agree to fund the operations of that facility. And then as revenues are realized, SANDAG will do its best to reimburse them up to these limits. And so that's been a real challenge to get that guarantee that they will operate, and they will, in doing so, accept some of the revenue risk. They will continue to operate this facility. We need that revenue coming in so that we can pay bondholders, and we can't both accept sort of operating risk and the ability to repay debt. So that's one of the sticking points, but then there's been a variety of ongoing discussions with the federal partners.
Thank you. Just to be clear, when you say GSA, you're talking about the federal government. Is that correct?
CBP on the operating side and staffing side, and GSA with.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear to the public, and I hate pushing blame on one agency to another, one level of government to another. It's all of our fault in one sense. So, but thank you for clarifying that.
You're exactly right. Forgive me if I was too pointed. Yes.
And if I can highlight, this is the first time a local government and a state government build the port of entry. This is typically the responsibility of the federal government. It was brand new field, and we just run into issue after issue and after issue. One of the main ones is finding the right color of money, the right funding pot to be used for a port of entry. We do not have access to those funds. Only General Service Administration can apply for grants or reserve money for a port of entry. So we had to become very creative and spent a year convincing Federal Highways Administration, which we can apply money for that type of funding, convincing them that a port of entry is a transportation facility. You do not have commerce coming through unless you have a port of entry. So they have given us concessions on maybe 80% of a port of entry being a transportation facility. So that was a whole year negotiation as well. So it's issue after issue because we're trying to do something different and innovative, which is great because we're helping ourselves, but it's not easy. And we were the first ones to attempt to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important piece of this as we're trying to decide how we're even going to what and if we're going to do anything with the tolls or any of the funding, we got to get the federal government to agree to give us more CBP agents in order for this to actually work. So I think it's extremely important that we don't keep talking about this like it's a reality already, because the Mexican side is ahead of us. We are still we're going to have to educate now this new administration so that there's an understanding, and our federal government, our federal delegation needs to prioritize this so that we can actually get the human capital that we need, right? We need people to be able to man the border. We need, there's a lot of requests that we're asking for. So I think it's really important for us to put this into context, because it continues to be a priority for SANDAG, but we need to make sure that the money is there for the actual facility to be built to the level that it needs to be built and the things that need to be done. And absolutely important to look at where else could we move money and so on and so forth. But I think where I am very concerned about is that we keep promising to the public that there is going to be an East Otay Mesa port of entry, and it's a top priority for all of us, but we haven't gotten that commitment from the federal government to the level that we need. It's okay to say yes, but we need the actual money and the personnel for this to be able to work, and we need to have a timeline for that to take place. Otherwise, I think it's irresponsible for us to keep telling the public, yes, this is going to happen, yes, this is going to happen. And I think that SANDAG's leadership was very creative in how it actually presented this item. And there are many places where entities are created to be able to be effective and to create these, multinational projects. But I want to make sure that we continue to emphasize that we don't put the horse before the cart? No, before the horse. Yes. It's extremely important that we really push the federal government for the funding that we need from CBP and for the actual facility to be built, because without it, the conversation on the funding and how we allocate it is moot. But Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. And you actually stole the words from what I was going to say. We can't turn a blind eye with over 90,000 individuals crossing daily. That is a fact we need to acknowledge. That alleviates the pressure and many things, right? These are U.S. citizens. These are legal immigrants that come as a workforce to study as well, tourism. And we all saw how important tourism it was specifically for downtown. I was working in Council District 3, and I oversaw the bids here in Council District 3 and how many millions, they were bleeding, they were hurting because we didn't have that tourism, because the border was shut down for tourism. And let's just emphasize on that. And I'm just gonna highlight what the chair said right now. In one of the borders committees, I can't think of the date right now, it was like 2 or 3 borders committees ago, we asked the CEO, Mario, to talk to the Consulate General's office to request that this new federal government that, as the chair mentioned, is ahead of us with the funding, and, that we ask them that a percentage, we're not allowed to ask them what they're going to do with the funds, but we can recommend for it to be a small sum or considerable sum to come back to the border infrastructure, right? So border issues and everything that we've been talking about the border, right? Contamination, more plants, but also we're talking about the Tijuana sewage crisis, right? It's affecting deeply. It's the main topic. So, and also before we sit down and have these conversations, how are we pleading with them, even though we have an open doors policy with them, if we're not there yet, right? CBP always says they're severely understaffed at the border, right? And that's when we open CBX, the Cross-Border Express, with the airport facility, they had to pay out of pocket for these CBP agents, right? They had to pay out of pocket for everything that CBP does. So all these plans, I completely agree. And I think there's a huge opportunity to talking with the New Mexican federal government and the possibility of them returning a percentage to the border region for all these emergent issues that we have, these health, traffic, everything that we're seeing. I think there's a real possibility, but we have to be there, right? And I just want to finalize with, you know, we have to take advantage. We have to, CBP has a sentry lane they charge for, right? A global entry line. There's medical lane passes that they charge for. This is a great opportunity to capture revenue for the thousands of people that cross daily, and that can help us return it to our many issues that we have around and surrounding the border region on both sides of the border. So I would highly recommend what the chair just mentioned and highlight that moving forward, we have these holistic solutions that when we are ready to sit down with the federal government, we are there. We have all this information, concrete information, and also to be able to ask for some of their money to be put into their side of the border. We have to be ready ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you again to the team for all of the work on this item, and we'll continue. One of the requests is that we do get independent counsel to provide, you know, an assessment. So I'm just going to direct it to the acting CEO so that could be done. And I see no other.
Chair, may I ask one 5-second question, just for clarification?
5 seconds.
I promise. So, hey, you interrupted 2 of my seconds. I just had a quick question financially. I just want to make sure I understand it right. It says certain tolling operation and maintenance costs are shared with Mexico and first funded off the top. Remaining net toll revenues are therefore split equitably as discussed above. And then SANDAG's funds, the rest of it is all obligated to various items. Is any of Mexico's cut after that they receive obligated to anything?
I don't think it is actually.
I don't think it is what I was told, but I just wanted to verify.
No, but there was some discussions. I know that I met with the ambassador's team in Mexico about a week and a half ago or something. And that was one of the recommendations that we said, is there a way to ensure that some of that funding goes to the Tijuana River Valley or other infrastructure needs in the border region? So I brought it up, but it's officially not. I don't know if you have different information.
Officially, we haven't heard anything.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, with that, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your information. The next item that we're going to move on to is the non-agenda public comments. I'm going to turn it over to Tessa.
Thank you. We have 2 continued non-agenda public comments. If you're still online, please raise your hand. Blair Beekman and phone number 415. Blair Beekman, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman. Yeah, I wanted to do my public comment at this time about border issues, and I kind of got one major talking points I wanted to go over with yourselves. Really good luck that we are. I think we should be at the next stage at working with Mexico at this time in ideas and solutions, and we're in a new time to really get everybody on board to work towards projects. So good luck how you can be doing that. It's important. Good luck that we are addressing, I hate to say the word deep state issues, but I'm very fearful that Trump is going to continue where Biden is currently at with Ukraine issues. We've done some good work with Israel to address no more missiles there. Can we do the same in Ukraine? And can Trump please do the same and work for peace and not war? We can do our part here at the local level by best practices, openness, and accountability, or some of them. We do that. We give awesome examples and practice peace, not war here locally. That's how we do not create a future of war.
And that concludes the continued non-agenda public comments.
Very good. Thank you very much, Tessa. This concludes our meeting. The next Board of Directors meeting will be Friday, December 6th at 10 a.m. This meeting is adjourned.